irregardless of the Geneva Convention, Article 12, 14, 15, 16, and Rule 47, which, Tim, you filleted yourself, brother, when you did that. So I'm doing you a favor by telling everybody that did not happen. Right. So the international criminal courts won't come after you. It did not happen.
I'd be expecting that thank you letter. The thank you letter's in the mail, just like his Purple Heart.
No comment.
No, he didn't kill Bin Laden. Probably blame me for being an idiot, but
Which we all were.
You have to make it to where crime doesn't pay. You have to deter crime, whether it's crime or terrorism. It's the same principle.
you have to clash with supervision. You have to, or nothing will get done. Supervisors can't learn how to supervise, and you can't learn how to respect a supervisor without confrontation. It has to happen.
Do not take that out.
JV team for life.
Best in the game, human performance TRT. There's a lot of things you can measure when taking TRT. Fat loss, muscle mass, no depression, high libido, but there's things that you can't measure, which is being a better family man, being a leader at work, making more money, being more successful. These are all things that are achievable with TRT.
Not only do they cover TRT, they cover weight loss, ketamine, and peptides.
Human Performance TRT is telehealth based, which means the consultation you have with your doctor is done via webcam or via phone. And your prescription is delivered right to your door. There's no need to go to the pharmacy.
If you're already on TRT from an inferior company, don't worry. If you have recent lab works from the past 6 months, you can upload it to hptrt.com and they will waive the lab costs.
Not only will they waive the initial lab costs, there's no lab costs at all while you're a customer with Human Performance TRT. So go to hptrt.com, use promo code HERO, and get 10% off not only your initial order, but every single month from here on out.
So don't wait any longer. Improve your quality of life with hptrt.com.
JV team for life.
Here we go.
You guys ready?
So ready.
Welcome back to the anti.
Hold on.
Whoop.
Go back to his camera. Oh, hold on. Sheesh. We're looking at you. That's my camera.
It's the door.
What's wrong with you?
Oh, yeah. Halfway there.
All right.
We good?
What a start.
Let's try this again.
Don't worry, guys. We're professionals.
The live's even crazier. Welcome back to the Anti-Hero Podcast, part Delta Force, part Street Cop, all truth. I'm Tyler, owner of Refracted Wolf Apparel. Use promo code ANTIHERO and get 15% off the best in outsider culture graphic tees, stickers, hats, flags, beanies, and even Ranger panties.
And I'm Brent Tucker, owner of FRCC. That's First Responder Cigar and First Responder Coffee Company. Use FRCC 15, that's FRCC 15, to get 15% off the world's best coffee and cigars.
And of course, this episode is brought to you by Ghost Bed. Sleep so good it's scary. Go to ghostbed.com/antihero and get 50% off your order. That's 50% off your order. Or at checkout, use promo code ANTIHERO and still get 50% off your order. 60,000 plus 5-star rating and reviews, all handcrafted here in America and in Canada. So go to ghostbed.com. Get yourself the cooling.
Every time.
Cooling.
I would be upset if you got it right at this point. This is my favorite part of the episode.
Coolanted. What is
cooling?
it?
Just cooling. Cooling.
Just
cooling technology.
Cooling technology. Those sheets that you could drape over yourself so you don't hang one leg out. You know, it's cold outside, so we're cranking up our heat. They have everything, the memory mattresses, anything you need. Replace the old mattresses upstairs. Go to ghostbed.com/antihero and get 50% off.
And don't forget our Patreon. We have the most affordable Patreon in the business. We have $3 and $5 levels, and it's what allows us to keep this place up and running, the lights on, the equipment. In fact, that we just moved into a new studio.
I know, it's amazing.
You know, it won't look like it to you guys. It looks very much like our old one, but if you're a Patreon member, you'd know what the rest of the studio looks like. And we also do the Thursday night live episodes every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to follow us on YouTube and tune in there.
And we will be in Philadelphia for our live show. There was a chance that there was going to be a blizzard. However, that is not happening, or if it is happening, it's happening later. So we are currently scheduled to be in Philadelphia on January 11th, Saturday, doing a live show with Conduct Unbecoming, the Unbecoming podcast, and Good Cop, Bad Cop. They're our host podcasts in Philly. So come party with us. $5 cover, live show. It's going to be amazing.
Let's get right into this episode. This is a follow-on episode to our initial Tim Kennedy episode that kind of broke the internet. It didn't. I don't think it. In fact, I know it didn't. It didn't do anything negative to guys in the community, because guys in the community were like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me, but what it did for them was kind of like validate the reasons that they didn't like him. But I'll tell you this, I'm not a fan of just not liking someone because you don't like them. You know, heck, it kind of goes back to Nickelback.
Yeah.
You know? Why do you hate Nickelback? Well, because I was told to hate Nickelback. You know, so it kind of validated. I think their reasons. But it really crushed, a lot of the civilian people who really looked up to him and had no reason to question anything in the book. But at the end of the day, we did as much research as we could, and
we used his book as a source of information.
Right. Well, we used his book and his teammates, and at the end of the day, Tim came back with a less than truthful rebuttal. I'm not, it's just not casting stones. We're going to be, as we always are, professional doing this. But that is the way to describe that. Even his rebuttal about being a liar, he lied in. And we'll get to some of that stuff. But and so rather than make it more of a he said she said thing. We actually have his teammates, which I talked to, before recording the first podcast. But what really, I think, energized them, but I'll let them explain as well as this goes on, Tim's unwillingness to come clean and come forward, brought some of these guys out of the shadows, because, guys in special operations don't want to come on podcasts generally, and I get that. So his lack of integrity and forthcomingness about this, kind of, I wouldn't say force their hand, but kind of encourage them to be like, if he's not going to do the right thing, then you push us so far, then we will. So that being said, with us we have Travis Warlock. Travis was the ground force commander and the team leader for the convoy that is in Tim Kennedy's book that we did the episode about. Again, we didn't cover the whole book. We just covered 2 chapters in the book. Yeah, there's way more to cover. But these guys were there in the convoy with Tim. So we have the team leader and the ground force commander here with us, Travis Warlock. Thank you so much for flying down and being here in person. We also have the senior Echo for that convoy. The Echo is the communications sergeant. You have 2 of them. You have a junior and a senior usually. He was the senior Echo. And with us, we have Kevin Wolf. Thank you, Kevin, so much for joining us remotely. I really appreciate it. And we also have Matt Jenkins, who was there during the whole duration as the convoy. He was their canine handler. Thank you guys so much. I know it's a big ask to come on the show, but I really appreciate it.
JV team for life.
Tyler, how many critical incidents do you think we've covered so far in this podcast?
Man, at least 5, 6.
And they're not going to stop. You cannot stop them all, so they're going to happen. And you really have 2 charters at that. Obviously, one is to stop them from happening. But since you can't stop them all from happening, you owe it to the people that you protect and depend on you to react to those situations in the most effective and efficient manner. And right now, really, whether you're a fire department, EMS, law enforcement, you're stuck with essentially radios.
And Apollo is the best way to manage resources during these events. because it's designed by first responders for first responders.
It gives first responders a common operating picture, which allows them to see where everybody is in real time, overlaid onto a map to see where they are. You can drop pinpoints and let them know where they need to go. And without constant talking on the radio, everybody knows where the incident is, where it's happening, and where they need to be.
And Apollo's an app-based application. It's just download and go.
It's an app, so it works with Androids, it works with iPhones.
And Apollo makes sure on the back end everything works, and you can just plug and go. They handle all the licensing, all the encryption, compliance, all the security. It's all handled by Apollo. It's crucial to know where everyone is and what they are doing in order to effectively control chaos in one of these either natural disasters or shootings or anything like that.
So if you want to learn more about Apollo, scan the QR code and ensure your department is ready to react to any crisis in its most effective and efficient manner possible.
JV team for life.
Let's start here. Some people have some questions because you actually did a interview with Tim. And let's just get to what was the genesis of that. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so Brent, when you contacted me about the book, that's the first time I'd ever heard about it. And you were asking me, hey, was this stuff really going on? And I was like, man, this is a pretty big stretch, you know.
Yeah.
But
well, you knew about the book. You knew about the book, or you didn't even know about the book. You just didn't know what was inside the book. Okay, yeah.
I don't think I knew about it.
Okay.
And you gave me a call and said, hey, man, I just had some questions about some of these accusations that Tim is making. And I said, all right. So we were talking and back and forth, and it was just kind of going one after the other. And I kind of saw he was just layering it on. I was like, he's trying to build a movie script. I got it. Little bravado.
Right.
No big deal. And probably about an hour into our conversation, you're like, hey, I didn't want to lead with this.
Right.
But
Yeah, no,
you did. And you're like,
Right.
hey, I wanted this to be, your honest response. But, I've got to tell you that, hey, the dude called you a pussy in the book and said your actions were just, typical of an officer looking out for his, mission instead of the men. And I was like, oh, my God, there's no way. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way he said that.
I remember that conversation vividly. And, you were almost in denial about it. You're like, he didn't say that. And I said, I'm gonna read it from the book right now. I don't know if you remember, you were like, take a picture. I was like, send that to me. Like, you were such in denial. That's what, because
Sure.
it was so over the top. I'm like, absolutely. Of course, it's the truth. So of course I'll take a picture of it.
Absolutely.
And I remember how taken back you were by it, because he really essentially, he does call you a pussy, and he calls you essentially a coward, and he talks about how he dressed you down. And let's take a step back just for a second. And it was over. What he said in the book was, and we'll get to this chronologically as well, but where he said you wouldn't drop bombs on a school, and he was pleading with you to drop bombs on a school, and you're like, no, because of ROE and political reasons, I can't drop bombs on a school. And Tim basically said, you're a pussy, you're a coward, you don't have the intestinal fortitude to do what's right in war. And he dressed you down and walked away. But that didn't happen, did it?
No, not even close. And, in the book, he kind of made me out to be a cherry captain. And later I told him, I was like, hey, dude, I had more time as an SFNCO at that time as I did as an SF officer. But, it was just so ridiculous. I mean, had he known that we started that deployment cycle, unfortunately, one of our 18 Bravos, he was wounded on the previous deployment, and he got a little lippy on the first time we came into troops into contact, and we just had to move him back to the B team.
Yeah.
And then on that convoy mission, I'm not going to use the guy's name, but we had a warrant officer on the team that was getting kind of squirrely. Mm-hmm. A lot of the guys didn't have confidence in him, so we left him at the fire base. So, to think that Tim would have walked up there and said something like that to me, and I wouldn't have just ruined his career. I mean, you just can't let. I don't care if you're in a leadership position as an E5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't let that happen, especially in the intensity of that situation.
Yeah.
I would have just killed him. I mean, not literally, but I would have.
Right.
He would have been on a Black Hawk. He would have
That's
been
right.
left at Anaconda.
Yeah,
This what would have happened.
Absolutely. Kevin, I'll bring you in just real quick because I don't unless our viewers were on an ODA or a small team, just in general, or maybe special operations, I think they don't understand how quick news travels on a team. Just insanely quick. Like no one does anything that the whole team doesn't find out about. Did you ever hear of Travis getting dressed down by Tim, or Tim calling him a pussy, or well, now I forget. I gotta take a step back. Was there ever a call for fire mission on a school that even happened? Was that?
No, well, what Tim did throughout the book is he took, the perfect lie has a little bit of the truth in it.
Okay.
So, yeah, there was a school as we were coming over to the village that was out in front of Anaconda.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a hardened school. You could see it was built by probably USAID years earlier. And we had some guys in man dresses with AK-47s running in and out. I think we had one of our Bravos shooting some 60 millimeter mortars at it.
Okay.
It was light fire, nothing
Right.
heavy. But thank God Tim wasn't the team leader, because he would have probably dropped a bomb on it. And we could see what happened probably within 10 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him the option to throw a 5-pound grenade instead of dropping a 500-pound bomb, and he came out with an entire family.
Right.
And his decision-making was so flawed
Right.
that thank God, but... I never talked to Tim about why we didn't drop the bomb on that thing, but once you're into the AO of another team...
Right.
I mean, I couldn't imagine if another ODA came into Argandab, where Kevin and I were working at, and Matt, and they came rolling through and dropped a bomb on the school, because we were all SF. The guys who
That's right.
did it, us there, it would have been heat
Without
forever.
absolute clear reasons of why you did it. Sporadic gunfire, Par was going to do it, and you guys did engage it because you said you were engaging it with mortars. So you
Right.
did. So it's not like you just ignored it.
No, but you had no idea who was in there.
But that's right. You don't know if they're using kids, inside there.
Right.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you remember about that?
I do remember talking about engagement orders, but I will say for that entire mission, I am maybe 3 feet away from Travis, pressed inside that same vehicle next to each other. If there was a time he was dressed down, I'm sure he would have vented about it inside the vehicle.
Oh, right.
Probably for the rest of the mission. Man, I just don't recall that at all. Myself, Travis, and then our Delta got very close in that vehicle.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would have come up at some point in that mission.
For sure.
No, I don't recollect anything.
So that was the catalyst of really, I would say, like you getting involved into it. And in fact, I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm glad that you were the one that broached that subject. When I called you, I was never on a hit piece mission. Like, tell me all the dirt.
No, not at all.
The way you just described it was the way I did it to everyone, where I said, hey, I'm just looking for the truth. If you don't know the answer, then I don't care. Like, don't make anything up. Just yes or no. And here's a list of questions I have. And I knew that I feel like I would have lost a little bit of validity by leading in with the, Tim Kennedy called you a pussy, right? You know what I mean?
Of course.
That would have lost some validity,
It would have been biased after that point.
yeah, it would
Not
have.
objective.
That's right. It had clearly been biased. So I waited to talk to you until we got to that point. Till we got to it. Chronologically, because it was very important. To me to get this done the right way, and hopefully Kevin and Matt feel the same way when I got a chance to talk to you guys as well. I'm glad you brought that up. So what is it that again, they're gonna. People would have would have heard you originally, by name on our original podcast that went viral, and then if they would have followed the story, they would have seen you sitting down with Tim on an interview. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so Tim came out, and at first I called him because I know you were wanting me to come on the first episode of the 101.
Right. Yep.
And I thought, you know what, man, I'd rather try to find peace than make war. So I called Tim up, and I got in touch with Tim, said, hey, give me a call. He called me back, and I kind of exploded a little bit and said, hey, look, man, I can't believe you did this. You know, there's just so many things wrong with what you did. You just don't have the maturity level to understand it. Aside from just insulting me, what you did was you basically made a statement and defined every 18 alpha out there as being a nitwit that a staff sergeant's going to run over. So for every defense attaché around the world, when JSETs or FID missions are coming up, if they didn't know any better and they just read Tim Kennedy's book, they're like, who in the hell are these people? This ODA coming into this country to do FID or JSET? And apparently their officers suck because they're letting Staff Sergeant run all over them for not bombing a building, thank God he didn't do. And it's just insane. So I told Tim, I was like, look, man, you need to correct the record. You need to come just make a podcast or whatever and just simply state that you didn't say that about me. It's ridiculous.
Right.
No one believes it anyway. Secondly, hey, I'd really appreciate it if you'd come out to my range and endorse it. Come out here and shoot with me and endorse it for kind of like punitive damages because you damn sure incurred them.
Right.
And I'm letting it go, and I'll just be a quiet professional, and I won't come on the Anti-Hero podcast.
Yeah.
So he's like, hey, I'd love to, Travis. I'll come out there. Came out with a video guy, not a crew, but just one dude in the video camera, competent individual, shot the course, loved it, said, I'm going to make you a promo in exchange for me having said this. He apologized to me and my wife, and I'm like, God, man, that's really cool, right? So he goes, at the end of it, I'm going to do a podcast, and I'm going to first form or video a intro to it to make it absolutely clear I did not say that to you. So here I am sitting in this podcast, and he starts bringing up, goes, hey, you know, and there's this time, Travis, I started talking shit about you, and I'm like, man, I don't want to rip this dude down. He came out here, asked for forgiveness. He did exactly what I asked him to do.
Yeah.
He didn't have to. I wasn't extorting him or anything, right? Just said, hey, man, I'd appreciate it if you do it, and he did.
Right.
And so we start going through the podcast. He's like, you know, I started talking shit about you, and at that time, I'm like, don't worry about it, Tim.
Yeah.
And just kind of downplayed it. I'd forgiven him.
Right. And of course, and the version he released, he makes it sound like the talking shit he did was very vague. Like it could have been behind your back. It could have it could have been just him venting to another teammate.
Sure.
Like there was no context of it. But I understand now that as you're explaining it, there would have been context to it if he would have done what he said he was going to do, which was start the video out with the correcting of the record of the book, where he says he dressed you down, you were incompetent, you were junior, and he was going to address that. But since he didn't do that, completely left that off his video, it made what he said look very. What he said, there was no context to what he said.
Correct. And I kind of I knew where he was going with it. I thought he was wanting to open it up. And at that time, I'm like, hey, man, water over the bridge. You know, you apologized to me and my wife. You came out here and did this promo. I don't want to beat you to death with this thing. Hey, no, and I think I just went into, hey, it's like locker room talk, whatever. And just let it go, thinking that was going to be the end of it until he released the podcast without the intro filmed. And when I sat back and looked at the context of it, I was just like, oh, my gosh, man. And I sent Tim a text. I was like, dude, why didn't you put that on there?
Right.
And I don't know, he had some ridiculous excuse. He always has excuses. I've got text after text after text. Yeah. Tim, thank you for coming out here doing a promo for me. It was great, man. You did a really good job. I even shot a cop and admitted to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of humble about it. And actually, he's really, when you sit down with Tim Kennedy, he's got a great personality. Very likable individual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are the best used car salesmen.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
And at this point, you feel like you've been bitten twice by him.
Totally. Oh,
Yeah.
was bitten twice. by him.
Yeah, didn't
Yeah,
feel like it. Yeah,
absolutely.
you were bitten twice by him.
Yeah, at first it was just this was insult to the injury. And so at that point, I think I got in touch with you. I'm like, man, I've had it with this dude.
Did you know that he was going to ask you to corroborate his details on the mission? Like he was, Travis, you remember this? You remember that? And I saw you kind of like laughed nervously. Did he say he was
No,
gonna-
there was no prearranged conversation other than he had his video guy after we shot the range. He goes, find a place we can sit down. And we just walked over with a couple of chairs, sat down, and they started rolling the tape.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And this will get me to my next point. And there are other things that he did talk about. Like he wanted to talk about the grenade throw, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
I've never underestimated Tim. I've always thought that he was a very smart person, cunning, that he wasn't to be taken lightly, and I didn't think he was going to take this lying down. I had hoped that he was going to come clean, but I wasn't surprised when he didn't. So he's done a good job of circling the wagons on what is true. Like, he did throw a grenade. You guys did get into several gunfights. You guys were in bad guy country. There are so many things, but that's what frustrates me. And we Kevin and Matt, we talked about this as well. The truth was good enough. It was an amazing mission. It was a massively successful convoy that went right up the gut of Taliban country, but that wasn't good enough. And so he's done a good job of circling the wagons on what is true and not really addressing at all, the bigger allegations. And even when it did look like he had a chance to address one of the bigger allegations, he didn't do it in a stand-up way.
No,
That's
not at all.
the best way I can say that professionally.
So there's got to be a reason why to everything. I'm just assuming there's a tremendous amount of liabilities on publishing that book nonfiction as a documentary.
Right.
I mean, it's like you could almost see everybody that bought it filing into a class action lawsuit for recovery of their investment.
Yeah.
And since, and I know a lot of you guys have already seen the 3-hour podcast that really dives into detail, about the 2 chapters we did cover. We're not going to do that all over again, but we are going to rehash some of it, now we're going to get to rehash some of it with the guys that were actually there and on the ground, and we'll take the he said she said thing right out of it. And you're not hearing it from one guy, you're not hearing it from 2 guys. You're going to hear it from 3 guys. And in fact, there were more guys that wanted to come on, but they were active duty still.
Yeah.
And they actually asked for permission to come on. And I get it that they didn't get that. But if you can't take 3 people's word for it that was there, then there's no hope for you. So Kevin, let's start it out with we'll stay chronological again. Like I said, we're just going to hit the wave. You know what? Before we start that.
Want to reference the book real quick?
I said we weren't going to reference the book.
Just one quick thing.
But there are I think there are 2. There are
quick
2 quick things.
And actually, Travis brought this to my attention.
Yeah, Travis brought this up. And I was like, let's lead out with
Sorry,
that.
Tim.
All right. So on page 2, in the introduction, Tim states, "You don't want to be dumb. Your life only gets better when you do a few things." And he lists some things. The first thing that he lists is take accountability for it. It's your fault.
He had that opportunity to practice what he preaches.
Multiple times.
And he did not. What's the second thing in the book? Next page?
Yeah. I did my absolute best to corroborate every single story in here, but the fog of war is a real phenomenon. And that is their claim to fame. And I also talked to Travis, and that is not true. Nick Palmisano and him both stated that they talked to everybody they could, multiple members of the team, and multiple people that were there. And that's just clearly not true.
I said I'd go to you, Kevin, just real quick. Travis, did he call you about the book? Did he call?
No,
well, of course he didn't, because you said you didn't even know he wrote a book, so you would know that. Kevin, just real quick, and I don't know the answer to this. I'd assume you'd have told me, but did anyone ever reach out to you in regards to the book, just trying to verify the record?
No. Several of the team members that I've talked to since the podcast came out, their phones were silent too.
How many? and I don't know. I know this doesn't sound humble, but it is true. The video we did ran rampant throughout the special operations community and the Green Beret community, and particularly. How'd you find out about the podcast?
So one of the combat weathermen with the Air Force attached with the team at Anaconda effectively texted me and said, "Have you seen this?" To a certain extent, they're not all that excited about Tim saying he was the sniper and savior of Anaconda. That was really not the case there. But in some way, I really got to thank Tim. This has been some weird way to reunite everyone. I haven't talked to Travis in 16 years, and I've spoken to other team members more now than I have in the last decade. So thanks, Tim.
You wanna throw a bad number out there of roughly how many people you've talked to since this podcast or regarding it?
I've probably talked to about 15 or 16.
Oh shit!
And
I'm relatively removed from the SF community. Otherwise.
Right. Yeah, and I'm trying not to ask a leading question, so I just don't know how else to ask it. Although your answer is exactly the answer I want it to be, which is the truth. Did any one of those people come back out and be like, well, they really got it wrong, and this and this were wrong? Was there anything that we got wrong that was ever talked about?
No. I would say there wasn't anything. There was one additional detail that you threw out in your live cast.
Okay.
Which didn't make it into the first one, and I wouldn't say you got it wrong. It just wasn't included. But it was actually for me.
Okay.
Genesis of why I reached out to you right in the first place. He was talking about rocking the baby in his arms. Tyler or someone brought it up. And when I heard that, I got sick to my stomach because it's so incredibly not true. And I know we'll get to that later.
It's funny you mentioned that. And I'm glad you mentioned that. We actually originally recorded that into the podcast and then into the original podcast. And I told Tyler, I said, hey, I'm like 98% on that one, but we have to be absolutely right in every aspect. So be prepared to cut that one out until we can really, really, really get verification on that. We got verification on that story, within the week of the live, and that's why we brought it up on the live. We actually recorded that story.
Yeah.
But that's how, again, like, that's how right, we wanted to be. And I kind of wish we would have left it in there because I ended up being right. But we couldn't take the chance. We just couldn't take the chance. And Matt, I'll throw it over to you. Did anyone reach out to you about this book? In fact, you spent a decent amount of time in the truck with Tim.
Yeah, I spent a short time with them, and no one's reached out to me. I mean, I've talked with one or two guys over the course of the years, just maybe 2 or 3 times, but I kind of, after I got out of the service, I disappeared.
And obviously it's obvious because you guys are talking to us, but I didn't even serve with you guys, and I was able to get a hold of you. So it's not for a guy that did serve with you, it would have been very easy, to get in touch with you guys. Did you happen to see the podcast or hear about the podcast, Matt?
Yeah, I was kind of just scrolling through, old Facebook one night and saw it, and I started looking in, and that's when I saw Travis on there, and kind of reached out to him, and the next day we kind of talked, and I think I started out with, "Hey, I'm still alive."
JV team for life.
And of course, we got to give a shout out to our boys in 09 Holsters, custom built, ruggedized duty gear made in the USA for cops by cops. A Leo and veteran owned small business. They do an upgraded solutions for duty gear, including cases for portable radios, body cameras, tourniquets, and pretty much everything you need to carry on duty. So go to 09holsters.com and use promo code ANTIHERO10ZULU9. That's ANTIHERO10Z9 and get yourself 10% off your order.
Revenge is an act of passion. Vengeance is an act of justice. Injuries are revenged. Crimes are avenged. Almost a century ago, big pharmaceutical companies re-engineered medical school curriculum and faculty with one goal: putting profit before progress. Anyone pushing back against the medical matrix they carefully crafted was threatened, silenced, censored, financially ruined, or worse. They are the problem. We are the solution.
You're clear to engage. Initials Mike Juliet Alpha. You're clear to engage with weapons. You're clear to engage with weapons.
JV team for life.
I being former ODA guy, I know how cool it'd be to actually end up talking about one of our missions together after not talking to each other for years. So I do get how cool that part could be. We'll start at the beginning, Kevin. Correct me on the number. 186 vehicles started. I'm off by one or
We
two.
were
It's in the
a little over
180s.
200. Just over 200. After
Okay.
I saw the vignette that are briefed to USASOC,
Okay.
I think initially I told you 180, 190.
Yeah. So it got to 200.
Is like 202.
That's crazy. So 202 vehicles start this convoy, which, again, ironically enough, he got that wrong in the book because he added at like 80 something. And even then, of all the things that he exaggerates in the book, he decides to underdo the numbers. And again, my reason for that is that this is opinion. I have to take it as opinion. That he was, again, like such a junior guy in the convoy that he didn't know the numbers. Like he wasn't that involved in the planning, or probably at all. But you'd have to tell me that.
Yeah, absolutely. His main responsibility was being the L&O to the checks off, which he called a company. It wasn't. It was just a team. But it was basically the embedder he had on him because we didn't share crypto with checks.
Yep.
So the reason Tim was there was simply if we had to maneuver or had to communicate with the checks off, we could call Tim and Tim would relay the message.
Yep.
So it kind of goes back to the first general order. I'm never going to leave my post until properly relieved. Right.
Yep.
So when he's in his book saying that he was running up to our vehicles, essentially what he was doing was leaving the entire Czechoslovakian Special Forces team in the blind.
Right.
I mean, it was crazy. I mean, if you have an array of weapons out, at the ODAs say we would just call that a 45. The checks off, man, they came with some Russian up-armored vehicles, some things that looked like rail buggies with 50 cals on the top, dirt bikes. So they came for they brought some weapons
toys,
to the show. They
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
It was we never worked with them before, but worst case scenario, if we had to pull them up or have them hold position,
Right.
once Tim left their vehicle, which I understand, I probably would not want to be with a coalition force in the midst of that, especially I think he was most of the time, I remember him running around in these things called dingoes.
Okay.
It's like a rail buggy, open-aired.
Okay.
So, yeah, going through Chakazoy Pass and something like that would have scared the hell out of me, too. I would have wanted to be up with my, ODA, no doubt.
Yeah.
But as soon as he took that upon himself to leave, he should have at least notified me or the team that, hey, look, you now have, you're in the blind. The checks are in the blind.
Right. You're not doing the job that you're assigned to do. And the team only works if everybody does their job.
Right. Absolutely.
So when the convoy, this 200 vehicle convoy rolls out into the heart of bad guy country, he talks about there immediately being problems with screwdriver holes punched in the radiators that they're already trying to sabotage this convoy. Kevin, do you remember having to stop the convoy at all due to screwdriver holes?
No, I don't remember any sabotage. We did have to stop for other reasons, though. A lot of wear and tear. Running through these mountains of Afghanistan in jingle trucks.
Right. And that's a huge difference. So no sabotage of vehicles. The Iranians is another wild one to me. How he talks about the Iranians constantly. Travis, we didn't talk about this beforehand. I'll put you on the spot, a little bit. What is it that would be super unique and unbelievable about Iranians being there? You want to take a stab at that?
So we, at that time in Afghanistan, we started seeing EFPs coming in that were made in Iran.
Right, yep.
Other than that, I mean, we found some
explosively formed projectiles,
right.
EFPs.
EFPs, okay.
And those EFPs, just so people know, because we throw out acronyms all the time, we get hit up in the comment section, like, you guys, I don't know what you guys are talking about. And an EFP is this molten lava of metal that can push right through armor.
Sure
yeah, so it makes your armored vehicle, almost useless.
Absolutely.
To IEDs.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I listened to all the intel briefs. There was not the first word of Iranian freedom fighters in any case or capacity. I mean, it was just literally dreamed up. I was reading through some of his chapters, and I was marking the place every time he made a reference to a movie.
Okay.
And I gave up after about 30.
Okay.
And I didn't even make it through the first chapter.
No.
It was unbelievable. So you can almost see that who's ever writing this or orchestrating it is thinking this is going to be movie material.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that was.
This is a movie script.
It is
Absolutely.
a movie script. We're not just talking about some Iranians. This is Tim talking about a horde of 400 Iranians charging you guys.
You run out of ammo within like 20 minutes. Oh, yeah. Be surrounded by 400 Iranian freedom fighters. They're kicking our ass. I'm like crawling on the ground, eventually trying to find ammo, but the vehicle in front of me explodes. RPGs are skipping off of my hood, and rounds are like ping, 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 ping. Mike Irish, who is driving, he's like, oh my God, those guys are still alive. So he like hops out of the vehicle, and I was like, Mike, where are you going? So he runs back down to where we just got blown up. I'm carrying my sniper rifle at this time. I have an SR-25 sniper rifle with a suppressor on the end of it. We're trying to pull these bodies out from underneath this overturned Humvee when the assault line of the Taliban run across the ambush zone. All this Taliban, they're like 10 feet from me. And I'm trying to move my sniper rifle as I'm holding this half cut off body that is Mike Keller in the 50 cal M2 machine gun turret position. This is God. Like, I don't care what you believe. There's only one way that you can describe how Mike was able to use a 50 caliber machine gun and shoot rounds around Mike and I and vaporize this assault line. There were people right here, and then there were no more people. They just disappeared.
So not only did you not hear of any Iranian fighters on the ground, Kevin, that I'm assuming that would rule out a horde of 400 storming you guys.
Yeah, not a force of 400.
How about 200? Maybe you just got the number wrong. Did 200 Iranians come after you guys?
I can't. I'm unaware of any Iranians.
So it doesn't matter what number. If I keep going lower, it's not going to help.
Maybe one or two snuck in there.
Yeah. So I even served out in Herat. And Herat, I don't know if you guys ever served out west in Herat.
Sure did.
That was on the Iranian border, and we still never saw a single Iranian fighter on the border. Now there were foreign fighters, Chechens is the first thing that comes to mind, but Iranians is just movie material, and it just adds. And again, if this was just about radiators, if this was just about Iranians, to be honest with you, we wouldn't be doing a podcast over it. But it just adds to this ridiculous. When you put the whole thing together, it just adds to this ridiculousness.
And it begs the question, too, how did you come to the determination they were Iranians?
They weren't wearing flags. That's
for sure. How would you know that?
Did you guys, as you guys took off from the convoy, did you guys ever get like SIGINT pushed to you guys that ambushes were coming?
Yes, but it was just that the main ambush in Chakazoy Pass. It was just we were getting some SIGINT from there, but other than that, that was it. No, we didn't get any SIGINT. The drivers were making a bunch of cell phone calls. Nor did we stop the convoy and shake 200 trucks down.
Yeah,
it was just one. I don't know.
I'm not saying the Afghans were great. By no means is that what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, we give credit where credit's due, and we put the blame where the blame is. And I'm also not saying on that mark that how many drivers? I mean, out of 200 vehicles, how many are Afghans or Afghan vehicles? Make a number. Make a close number.
180.
Yeah, 180. I'm not saying the if 180 of those vehicles, you have 180 Afghan drivers. I'm not saying all of them were clean. I'm not. But if they didn't poke holes in the radiators and they weren't making cell phone calls and they weren't actively trying to get you guys killed, I think it's a really dirty thing to throw that on them and saying, this is what these dirtbags were doing, when at the end of the day, they actually did their job. But Kevin, I'll let you either rebut that or fill in the blanks on that one.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you. I also think it's not a strong incentive to do that. They're in this convoy with us.
Exactly.
Was there one or two believers out there? Possibly. Not 180 of them.
Right.
With that, they would be in the same fight as us. They're in the same convoy path, getting ambushed. I just don't see the incentive. Most of them are just Afghanis trying to make money off of this crazy convoy.
Matt, this one's for you. And it seems like a softball now because we've already established what these drivers did and did not do, but we have to talk about it because it was brought up. Did you or see any ODA guys ever put a pistol to drivers' faces to make them get it back in the truck and make them continue going because they were trying to abandon the convoy?
Not at all. Didn't see it. Didn't hear about it.
Yeah,
Didn't
and if
happen.
you didn't see it, you sure as heck would have heard about it. You know, that's again some I don't know, like this seems like a apocalypse now, like out of a movie. And it's one of those things. I'm not saying that would never happen, and that it has never happened. If it did, my gosh, it would be so far and few between, and it'd be such a just such a pivotal moment for that to happen. But in this convoy, it just never happened. And it goes back to making Green Berets look like these cowboys that'll stick a gun in their partners' faces to get them moving.
Yeah, here's the other thing. Looking at the trucks were the safest place to be.
Yeah.
The Taliban were not shooting the Afghan truck drivers. And it was very much, you know how corrupt everything over there is in the government. This was like not to say the Teamsters are corrupt, but I'm saying this was like an Afghan Teamsters union.
Yeah.
These trucks were, I don't know how many of them actually own their trucks, or this was like some warlord that was paying, but there was a lot of hands in the pot. Yeah. But these truckers went out there, they knew they were getting paid, but probably they were being told to drive too.
Right. Yeah. This is their livelihood. This is their paycheck.
Sure.
And that checks out. The Taliban is playing the same game we are as far as hearts and minds. Sure. Now, they play it a very different way, but they also know if they go and just shoot up, 180 Afghan trucks, that those are the people that they're expecting to give them information and to work with them. They're here for you guys.
Absolutely.
Not for them. The next thing we'll talk about is the we go, the Chakazoid Pass is probably the next thing. This is something that absolutely happened. The IED happened, and the vehicle in front of Tim, and he had and as far as I could tell, I've talked to most of them. He calls Irish Mike Keller, and Mike Goebel, and him were all in the truck, and said this truck flipped. The IED hit so hard, it flipped the truck.
Right. So what happened?
And that it did.
Yeah, there was RG. Kevin and I were in, and the second team RG was behind that.
Okay.
And then as we started going through this Chakazoid Pass, what we did is we pulled a security element up from our rear ODA.
Okay.
It was a Humvee, and it had an Afghan National Army in it. So what we did is we put them right behind our truck because wheelbase difference between the RGs and GMVs.
Yeah.
So they were kind of the sacrificial lambs.
Yeah. And I hate to do this again. It's but the RGs. The RG, explain the difference between an RG and a GMV, because people are they're not going to know the terminology difference. Do your best to.
RG looked like I guess if you were to see a Wells Fargo truck, armored truck.
Yeah.
It looked
Yeah,
like
yeah.
something like that,
Okay.
except for a 4-wheel drive configuration with a turret on top.
Yeah, but it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely massive.
Okay.
40,000 pounds.
Yeah.
If I remember.
And the GMVs are like the back is an open air back, but the front half looks like a Humvee.
It does.
And it's called a GMV.
And they got turrets on the top of those.
And they got turrets on the top too. The problem with that story is he says that it flipped and it flipped on top, literally like the old like Top Gun, like
Sure.
they right on top of them, and that it landed on their roof and they had to reverse out and shake this thing off the roof. Now that can't be true because if it landed on your roof, there is a 50 cal gun up there that Tim says goes up and saves their
That's right.
life eventually. Well, there'd be no 50 cal gun up there if a GMP landed on it.
No.
And then he says in the book that him and Irish Mike move up and pull the Afghans out of the vehicle, which very well could have happened.
I confirm that did happen.
Okay.
I didn't see it. Kevin
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
were ahead of this by now.
The problem isn't that. The problem is this. Is that, he says he runs up there with his SR-25 and he's hip firing it like Rambo, keeping the Iranian horde at bay. And then as he's pulling this, has this legless Afghan that's bleeding all over him and he's got
That didn't
guts and blood and everything all over his kit. And that he would have died if it wasn't for Mike K. Getting on the 50 cal gun and just red misting,
Right.
like going right over his head and just red misting the Iranians. Again,
Well, this is a perfect example of Tim taking a little bit of truth and expanding it. The truck did flip and it landed on the bumper of their GMV. They just kind of had to back out to let it drop down.
let it finish dropping.
It was horrific and everything that happened. And had he just kept
tell the
to
truth. Right,
it was
yeah.
fantastic enough. It didn't need all that extra. But and I know Tyler, you do too. The hoods on these things are fiberglass.
Yeah.
You throw a Humvee on, well, it's going to be just destroyed.
Right.
So none of that happened.
Right.
I saw these 4 Afghan National Army soldiers as we made it to like a casualty collection point just outside of Chakazoy Pass. Everybody had their legs.
Really?
Everybody had their legs. It was just the front half of the vehicle was blown off. And the only way that somebody would have lost their legs if they had them outside the door, maybe.
Right. Yeah. But everyone had their legs. He's not covered in blood and guts of a legless Afghan. And the other thing, it's just like the point he tries to make with you, where he makes up a story and then he uses that story to get like a point across. And what he does on this one is he gets really upset that American aviation medevac would not fly for these Afghans.
Totally false.
And really makes a really long-winded point about how messed up that is, which, if that were true, he would have a point. But the fact that you are now going to discredit the whole U.S. Army and dust off and our medevac aviation units to say that we were so heartless we wouldn't medevac Afghans is an absolute lie. So those Afghans got medevaced.
Yeah, there was one time where we had just a truck driver wreck, and we had to stop out in the middle of the desert and call in a medevac for him. I mean, there was no difference.
And that was how it was in my career as well. I've never seen medevac get denied for an Afghan.
No, not at all.
And the next one, big one we'll hit up is after the.
Well, here, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Yeah, what you got?
Actually, Tim knew this because the very civilians that he
fragged.
I
was going to get to that. I know. I was going to get to that.
They brought in a medevac for him.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and we'll get to the details of that when it's fine. As soon as I said that, I thought I'm going to talk about that when we get to that.
There we go.
Because it did happen on the mission. The next one that I really want to talk about is the you guys ronned overnight, which I guess is redundant. You guys rested overnight or ronned, And there was another, according to Tim, Mongolian horde that's coming down the mountain and almost wipes you guys out. You know, if it wasn't for the JTAC saving you guys. And, you know, he also says at this point, he's sleeping under a Humvee and like he's out of ammo. He has no ammo in his M4. He's almost Winchester on his sniper weapon, and he's about to go out and recover, you know, do like a battlefield recovery from AKs because he's so low on ammo. You guys
we were a rolling resupply for the fire base, and we had more than enough even for us. I mean, for the most part, Kevin, if you could probably help me out here, it was most of the belt-fed weapons, the heavy machine guns, and the Mark 19s that were doing all the fire. We really weren't even returning fire with our own weapons. We were buttoned up inside armored vehicles and trying to keep them off and using casts.
Right. Of course, that's very Afghan war. Heavy, which is always it seems like it's always at a distance. It's always crew serve weapons or casts that's coming in. And Kevin, that's true to this point as well.
Yeah, and on top of that, when we first got in the country, we did a whole bunch of welding and bolted on all these ammunition carriers onto the RGs and GMBs. So there was no shortage of ammunition. Our Bravos, they made sure we were prepared. So kind of that statement that we were ever black on ammo is a discredit to them. Because the Bravos made sure we were ready to rock.
That's a great point.
We were.
Yeah, that is a great point. Again, it makes it sound like you guys weren't prepared when it just wasn't true. In fact, before we get to the cast thing, I'm going to take a step back just for a second because I got a question for Matt. This is where the beginning of his of the grenade frenzy comes in, and if you guys have been tracking this and all, the grenade memes on the internet have been crazy. And they won't stop.
50 Shades of Grenades.
Oh, gosh. And they just won't stop. This is where Tim and the Czechs, it's before the Ron, after the Chakazoid pass, where they see some Taliban out in the mountain pass or, just off at a distance. And him and the Czechs go on this just fast, furious, direct assault where Tim hops out and they gun him down with M4s, the first 3 close distance, and he finishes off the other 9 that are in this mud hut structure with what he says is half of his grenades, and he says he throws 25 grenades in this hut, and then they mow it down with machine guns after that and just make it rubble. We talked about it on the podcast how ridiculous that is, and the structure of those mud huts are absolutely impenetrable. Yeah. So that's not true. At this point of the convoy, Matt, you are you with Tim and Tim's truck at this point of the convoy that you can remember?
No, not yet. It was the next day.
It was the next day. At any point, do you remember seeing Tim running around with a backpack, any backpack, or a backpack that may have held 60 pounds of grenades in it?
No, he was not running around with the Santa Claus sack of grenades.
How about, we'll play the same game. How about 40 grenades? Is there?
That was what they tried saying is like, it was a number. Like, we don't really know. He joked and said 50. I put 50 in the book.
Right.
And so they were still implying that there was a lot of grenades.
Right. At the end of the day, he's trying to make light of the exact number, but he didn't say, I was just messing around. I never ran around with a backpack full of grenades. He's just arguing it wasn't 50. He's like, it was a lot, but it wasn't 50.
And I almost wish we hadn't even brought that up. It's such a moot, silly point, and it was what they got to use to go, okay, one thing we got wrong. And it's like, that's the least. The Valor, the Purple Heart, like all that's the one that everybody cares about. No one really cares about.
Right. It's just funny. It's just a funny thing to lie about. But he never took it back and said, I was never running around with a backpack full of grenades. He just argued the number, which begs the point. Matt, did you ever see him again running? You said you never even saw him with a backpack.
Yeah, never saw him running around with a backpack. Just his kit, him running around in.
And the pictures that we do have of him from the convoy, he doesn't have a backpack on. By chance, Kevin or Travis, you guys ever see him running around with a backpack?
I couldn't imagine how nervous I would be with 50 grenades, even 5 grenades rolling around.
Yeah,
in a
throw whatever number you want out
much
there.
less 50. I would just assume leave the thing down the ground. I wouldn't even pick it up, much less running around with
Had because it was so meme heavy. Had to cover the first grenade heavy part of it. And now we're back with the with the cast on the Ron. Tell us about the cast. Like, what do you remember about the cast that night?
So that was after the Chakazoid pass.
After the Chakazoid pass. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we had AC-130s on station. I don't remember how they got there. Definitely our JTAC. Matt was
they probably
amazing.
Flew.
Yeah. Did he just really say that? Yeah, absolutely. So they were buzzing around all night. I have no idea how many were on station, or whether they were dry on ammo or Winchester or out of gas, and another one had to come in. Kevin might be able to add some more fidelity here on this.
No, but I do remember the AC-130 keeping us safe all night.
It was like all night. It was constant shooting. I mean, maybe every 30 seconds you were hearing either a chain gun going off or a 105 millimeter howitzer coming out of it. It was just something all night buzzing around us.
And that's and it's far and few between. But I've been on missions like that where the AC-130 seemed to always have something to shoot at. But were any of them ever close enough to do a battle, even do a BDA, a battle damage assessment, where they're close enough? Like, all right, I'm going to send some guys out. We're at least going to go check for pocket litter.
No, we had
see if they're Iranians. Something.
Right. The next morning when the sun came up, we had all the trucks kind of corralled like cattle.
Okay. Yeah.
In this open area. And when I got up, I couldn't see anybody laying around. I mean, the hillsides went up all around us from what I can remember, and there was no bodies. No one even mentioned that.
So this next part would be difficult for it to happen, where he says he was using the crow system of the vehicle to identify the sea of dead bodies, their heat signatures, and using his sniper weapon to I believe he said, and I don't believe it, I know, he said for hours he had to engage either dead bodies or people pretending to be dead or people who were wounded off this sea of bodies, because he had to make sure they were all dead in order to protect you guys, so you guys could leave without them jumping up and playing dead and attacking you guys.
Yeah, so he made the reference to painting this picture as here's another movie take of it out of Braveheart, with all the bodies just laying around everywhere.
Yeah, right.
And this is something that, gosh, Tim, even if you did do that, man, why in the hell would you talk about it? You made us look like idiots. I mean, back to imagine one day after Trump, if we have another Democrat presidential president come in, when you understand how ambassadors are given out, the only thing they are just people that made extravagant campaign contributions.
Right. That's
all they are. They're their cronies for the most part. So you can imagine some of these little third world countries that we would go into for FID, JSETs, and an ambassador not having any idea what an SF team is until their little Ivy League assistant came up and said, "Well, sir, I read this book by Tim Kennedy, and apparently they just shoot people laying on the ground with barely a heartbeat as long as they had a gun around them, irregardless of the Geneva Convention, Article 12, 14, 15, 16, and Rule 47, which." Tim, you filleted yourself, brother, when you did that. So I'm doing you a favor by telling everybody that did not happen. Right. So the international criminal courts won't come after you. It did not happen.
I'd be expecting that thank you letter. The thank you letter's in the mail, just like his Purple Heart. Just to make sure, in case both of these guys have bad memories. Matt, do you ever remember that happening? That story?
No, not at all.
Matt, do you think you would remember that?
I'm pretty certain I would have remembered that because just like Travis said, that's with the criminal courts and whatnot. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretty sure that's a war crime.
Now, you actually do have some history with Tim Kennedy's sniper weapon, ironically enough, don't you?
Yep. The next day when he was running around and he jumped in the back of the truck with me, and me being just a dog handler, he took over my 240 that I had and told me to use his sniper weapon because it has a scope, and all I had was a red dot, and I employed it one time, and he said, "Did you get him?" And I said, I think so. I mean, I don't know, 50-50, either I did or didn't.
Yeah.
And then he kind of gave me a nudge saying, "Man, I haven't even got a kill with that one yet."
Ooh, that's not gonna go well with his. It
doesn't corroborate.
With his story, and it's gotta. Not to make light of it, but it does hurt when the dog handler potentially gets a kill with your sniper weapon and you haven't. Which again, at the end of the day, is fine. Like if that's the story, that's actually a funny story. Throw a funny story in the book.
Absolutely.
But but you can't.
Tim's got to be the superhero.
Yeah, but that doesn't make him the star of the movie that he wrote. We'll fast forward up a little bit. Again, I said I wouldn't make this a 3-hour podcast. The next thing that happens is the school in the book, and we jumped ahead. We already talked about that. Unless there's anything you guys want to interject that we didn't cover, we can talk about the school real quick. The second thing he covers that we actually didn't cover in the book, but make it a special one here, just because we had so much things to cover. There is a moment where they're taking fire in the book from a PKM, and he gets this idea that he wants to shoot the Carl G into this cave, and this he does throw some humor in, and he goes and he gets the Carl G and he sends. They only have a couple rounds, and he sends one and he misses. And however many rounds he throws, he misses, and the Bravo from the team gets it, and Tim in a weird way is hoping that the other guy doesn't get a hit because he missed it and the other guy gets a 1-round hit. Do you guys ever remember employing a Carl G on a cave with a PKM?
I don't. I can't imagine someone grabbing a Carl Gustav and 2 AT4s in one time and trying to manage that. Not to mention, where are you carrying the rounds for the Carl Gustav? I don't know, it was so silly, and we had so many other things to cover. Didn't even cover that one. And we never attacked a cave, did we, Kevin?
I don't even remember a cave.
I don't either.
Let alone attacking a cave.
The next one is a big one, and this is where we come up to the village where the team from Anaconda comes down, pluses you guys up. You guys start clearing a village. Give us some context of why they came down here and why you guys cleared that village.
So yeah, they just met us out in, this is their AO. You got Anaconda within the distance and this village out in front of it. We are just coming over the hill, and they want us to go straight through the town, the village, for our route clearing team to clear it.
Okay.
And man, we're taking mortars back from the Taliban, small arms fire, and it was just like, nah, this is crazy. We can see the fire base is off to the right, and we got this wide open desert. So I'm like, hey, let's just swing this whole thing to the right.
Yeah.
Stay out of that green zone.
Right.
And the team finally came up and
because we're a
met us.
resupply mission. That's our job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as we had to eventually get close to the green zone because that's where it was kind of like a funneling process to get into the gate. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. And
yeah, that's spot on.
So we started just getting closer and closer and closer. The fire started coming out, and we just turned into them to push them back and just move down into the green zone. For lack of a better part, just trying to look for targets to hit, and hopefully just to be an intimidating force with these massive vehicles and any
Right.
ground troops with AK-47s.
Yeah. At some point, you got to send a message. You got to look like a hard target.
True.
Yeah.
True.
So you guys did end up clearing part of this village to ensure that the convoy could go through unscathed, because you guys were concerned that the convoy had been close enough to the village that it would have caused a problem.
The truck drivers would eventually stop, and when they're starting to hear that stuff, they just stop. They knew they weren't taking fire,
right?
But they would just stop moving.
But they're not going to push their luck,
right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Or that would be a good assumption.
Yeah. So this is the part of the book where he goes back to his grenades, and he's throwing grenades into rooms and following the grenade, and killing everyone in the room. Of course, the problem with that is you don't follow grenades into rooms because it creates a massive cloud of dust that does not go anywhere anytime fast. So that's right out. But the point to this one is the controversial him and Mike Goebel, just two guys on a compound wall, and they were going to go into the vehicle gate. Everyone's been in Afghanistan. Every compound's so similar. They have a vehicle gate. They have a walk-through gate. They always have two gates. One's, again, a walk-through gate. It's a man-sized gate. The other one's for their vehicles. They have this idea to go in through the man-sized gate, and Mike Goebel's on one side, Tim Kennedy's on the other side of this door, and apparently as Tim goes to walk into the door, Mike Goebel reaches across the threshold and pushes Tim to the ground, and Tim says he thought Mike just wanted to go into the door first, and so he's going to get up and punch him in the mouth for doing that move. And then he realized that Mike saved his life because somehow, miraculously, he knew there was a PKM on the other side of this wall, and the machine gun fire ripped the door to shreds. We'll stop there for a second. So do you remember Tim Kennedy and Mike Goebel being the only two guys up there to clear this compound?
So I had
and Mike having a sixth sense of
right. I called several people on the team that was there at the time. I came up later with the RG, or Kevin and I rolled up later. They were already taking fire.
Who called you up? Do you remember?
I think it was the team sergeant.
The team sergeant?
I think it was the team sergeant. And am I right, Kevin? Do you remember that? You were listening to everything on the net, the same thing I was hearing, and we started headed that direction, found them. The memory's blurry now. But I remember them saying they were taking fire from the rooftop.
Okay.
So they ran up next to the wall to shield from it.
Yeah.
I looked at the pictures. I had several of them. I don't see a secondary gate. Secondly, Mike Goebel was manning a turret in another GMV. Why would he have gotten off that main gun out of the turret to run down there by the wall? So a couple of
that would be another abandoning your post.
Right, and
position.
I can't see Goebel doing that. He was leaning forward in the foxhole always. Yeah. That guy was amazing.
Now, Matt, at this point of the convoy, you're in the vehicle with the team sergeant. Is that correct?
Yes, I was with the team sergeant, Mike Goebel, and that GMV.
Okay. What do you remember about this part? Do you remember seeing Mike Goebel and Tim Kennedy, two guys taking machine gun fire, just two guys up along the wall?
I remember, some guys going up to clear it and whatnot, and were we getting fire from the compound? Yes. Was it coming from the door or the roof? I'm really not sure.
Right. Was it half the team? Was it four guys? Was it just two guys taking that fire? Does anyone remember who was on that wall?
Hey, Matt, if I've got it wrong, man, just you and I haven't talked about this. So if my memories, you've got a better memory of this. It's no bad on me, man, if you correct me.
Copy that. Yeah, Mike did get out of the truck and was up there, and I actually got in the turret while he was up there.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Because I remember,
which is right. He'd have left the gun, but he'd have made sure someone else was on that gun.
That would make sense. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because I was in the trunk and I wasn't facing, where we were getting fire from.
But do you remember how many people were on the wall receiving fire?
Was this like before or after, like you drove the RG through the door?
Before, yeah, yeah. This would have been before. Because if Mike would have got out of the truck, and I'm not trying to lead anyone, I'm just asking, I'm putting two and two together, in real time. That means only Tim would have been against the wall, getting ready to go in as a singleton, which would have basically never happened. But that would have explained why Mike needed to go be with them. But that wouldn't make a lot of sense that he would have had to go plus up a singleton out up against a wall.
Yeah, I do remember like the man door, and that there was two guys there. So I know one of them was Mike. I'm not 100% certain who was the second one.
Right. Do you remember seeing that guy get pushed on the ground?
I do not recall that.
Okay. All right. And then what called you up to ram the gate?
We were moving the RG up to it because we could just, like we talked about before, the GMBs were open in the back. That was always our concern is the half the team that were in those two GMBs just scared the hell out of me the whole time.
Yeah.
And so we went up there, and that's the last thing I'd heard is we're taking fire from the gate, and so I'm expecting the worst on the other side of this thing.
Do you remember who's calling that? We're taking fire from the gate?
I thought it was the team sergeant. I remember it being the team sergeant saying we're taking fire from the rooftop. I don't know if he said, "Hey, we need some help" or whatever, but we just moved to the to the sound of gunfire. Right?
Did the team sergeant ever get out of the vehicle?
I don't think he would have. He'd be driving, I believe.
That's right.
We were stationary, and he was like right next to the truck. He wasn't far from the truck at all.
Yeah. Did he move up to that? Can you remember? Do you remember him moving up to the wall, or did he stay with the truck?
He stayed with the truck. Okay.
And then what pushed you to ram the gate? That call was like, hey, we need help, and then how could you tell what compound needed help?
Well, I saw the GMB there, and I saw the guys on the wall.
Okay.
Right next to the double gate.
All right. I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this because no one's really said it. So I'm not looking for it. So you said you saw guys against the wall. How many guys did you see against the wall? Was it 2? You just don't remember.
If there had been 3 there, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay.
And came up, and I was just inside the RG. You cannot hear gunfire.
Right. Everything's
the diesel's roaring. You got the comm suites going off. And it was like, you know what, man, let me just use some violence of action here and just start drilling this gate. And if nothing else, it's probably going to scare the hell out of them. Which maybe that's what happened, maybe it didn't. But we just went ahead and breached the gate because there were some guys against the wall. They appeared to be pinned from our perspective of the windshield. And
did you guys take fire? Did the machine gun see the RG and swing your way?
I couldn't tell if we were getting. I couldn't tell in there. Had no idea. Right. Kevin, do you remember us taking fire?
They definitely noticed us coming through the wall. But, I'm sure that drew their attention, and I'm sure we exchanged fire and were fired on.
So one of the details of that and what he says prompted him to be quick with the grenade is that you guys, the GMV was taking the direct fire from this machine gun now and getting chewed up, and he thought you guys were in danger and he had to do something right now because that machine gun was. You would have been probably, I'm just guessing, 30, 40, 50 feet from anywhere in that of the building, because the courtyards aren't usually that big. Right. So like you'd have known if you were taking PKMs to the engine block and to the windows.
Yeah, I mean we'd taken it before where we'd gotten out and seen just the little sparkles in the rear glass, and I mean those things are just once you're inside of them.
Yeah.
It's just you're in a little vacuum almost. I never could tell if we were ever getting,
Right.
you know, like you see some of the stories, the ping, ping, ping going off. I never heard that. Did you ever hear that stuff, Kevin, hitting the vehicle?
No,
I never
didn't
did,
hear
no.
any of that. In fact, most of the time we had to be told that we were troops in country.
Yeah, right. Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. Or the Afghan National Police would go bailing out of those Hiluxes, and that's how we know we're taking fire.
Right. The what do you remember about the infamous grenade incident? So it doesn't seem like, unless he thought it was something. Well, that wouldn't be true because in this particular. So let's rework this event. He says the GMV is getting chewed up, and that's why he throws a grenade, to save you guys. But that wasn't exactly how the grenade throw went.
No, I
was
remember
it?
looking out once we knocked the gate down, backing up, and looking at the guys on the wall to my left. And I was like, hey, is it good? Can I come out? Because I can't hear anything, right?
Right.
And I don't remember it, but I'm assuming someone said, yes, cool, come on out. I got out, joined the guys on the wall, and there's Tim. And he's looking right over the rubble. He's like, hey, I think I see a machine gun barrel or a gun barrel or something. He goes, should I throw a grenade? And I'm like, yeah, let it fly.
Right. So he wasn't this grenade throwing machine juggernaut that is the apex of violence of action and just gets after it whenever he sees it.
Right.
He actually asked for permission to throw a grenade.
Yeah.
From the same guy that he said he dressed down and called a pussy is now the guy he has to ask for permission to throw a grenade.
You connect the dots, man.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But of course, that's not. He didn't write the truth in the book, so you wouldn't have been able to make those connections in the book because he didn't say it properly.
Very true.
Where does he throw the grenade from? Does he throw the grenade from that walk-in door that Matt remembers, or does he go over to where you guys punched a hole?
Yeah, it's right where he punched the hole. He was right off the front of the vehicle. Some of the rubbled wall was almost coming down at 45 degrees.
Okay. So there's another reason we know he didn't throw it to save your guys' life. Not only because he asked you for permission, but he went to the same hole that you guys had made.
And I definitely remember there was no machine gun fire coming out of that compound at the time. None. Because I remember sticking my head around looking across it. He's like, it's that window. I saw a barrel or whatever. I'm like, yeah, throw it.
Yeah. And then what he ends up doing is hurting a family, and then this is where it does. It gets just. I gotta use my words right because I don't want to sound unprofessional. It gets to a level of, I guess we'll just call it narcissism. I don't know what to call it. Where he again goes into great detail about hearing screams, stepping into a room, seeing a bloody mess, and the rounds on the floor, and knowing that these bastards, use these innocent people as a human shield, and he had to clear the building and walk into this mess that he created. When that's not true. That's not how you guys got the family out. How'd you guys get the family out? Did Tim go in and clear it?
No. Well, I have no idea.
To go find did he go find the family?
No. So he threw the grenade. We both back behind the wall. Hear the boom, right? Look back. Don't see anything, not hearing any more machine gun fire. I hadn't heard any since I got out of the truck. And it's like we came back behind the wall, and for some reason we looked again, and there's the whole family that had already come out. They're away from the building, out in the middle of the courtyard, and we can see this woman holding the child in her hands.
Yeah.
And I think that's when I said on Tim's podcast there, or the little video we made, I made the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, and it was just an emotional decision to run out there and grab the child. The wound was just horrible. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
So you were first American hands on that child?
Yes.
Not Tim Kennedy.
I don't think he ever touched her.
Clearing. Not Tim Kennedy clearing a structure, and he describes it again. It's like, wow, we'd have never done this in a SIF team. It's just me and one guy clearing all the way to the screams and to the blood. That's not how it happened at all.
How
In
crazy
fact,
would that be to do that anyway? Just insane, right?
When you have the manpower, and you guys were there, so why wouldn't you grab someone and say, "Hey, this is what we're doing"? So this, do you remember, Kevin? Do you remember what was the system on top of the RG? Was it a 40 mic or a 50 cal? Do you remember?
So we had a 50 cal on Travis and I's vehicle, and the other RG had a 40 mic.
So were you in the vehicle this whole time, or did you come out after with Travis? Do you remember?
So I came out. I remember coming out when the family came out. I'm still, in the vehicle, making sure if we had to maneuver the vehicle into a different position, if someone showed up or whatever, we would still be able to mobilize. But once I saw the family come out, I was like, we need to render aid.
Okay.
There was, if I'm remembering correctly, about half a dozen people came out.
Yeah,
sure was.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he sent the pictures. Yeah, we saw the pictures and posted. And I post them again for this episode to show. So you would definitely remember this, I believe. Kevin, in his book, he goes and gets the medic, who he calls the Ginginator, and gets them to start rendering aid to the kids. And he said the Ginginator was on the 40 mic, and that's when he replaced the Ginginator in the Crow system. That's when he saw the bad guys flee out of the back of the building, and it was his turn. It was his turn to get sweet justice for them using them as a human shield, and he lit them up with the 40 mic, and sent them both to Allah. Do you remember? Well, one, it wasn't a 40 mic. You guys had the 50 cal.
He had the medics wrong too. It wasn't the Ginginator.
It was Dan. It was
Dan was the medic in our.
So
he was gunning.
Do you remember Tim getting on the gun and start lighting the bad guys up?
No. Also, after we went through the wall, the temperature of the situation came way down. It came way down. There was still some firefighting out in the distance because we had the other team with us from Anaconda, but the temperature came way down. We were walking around, obviously rendering aid. It was not a high-stress situation. So hearing mics go off, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Well, it would have been your vehicle. It would have been your vehicle at the 50 cal, or it could have been the maybe you got the vehicle wrong. And say I don't want him to go. Well, I got the vehicle wrong. It was
that's what he did with the mics.
Yeah, that's what he did with the mics. Say no, it was the other vehicle that was parked right behind it. But it would have had to have been in close vicinity, and you would have heard the thumping of it. You would have heard the explosions of it, and you sure as hell would have heard the story of it that said, "Yeah, I messed up when I hurt those kids, but don't worry, guys. I made up for it and killed the bad guys. You're a small team. You'd have known about it."
Absolutely.
I'm sure you've seen the picture of Travis and Dan working on the child. They're doing it on the steps of the RG. So if someone was 3 feet behind them laying waste, you'd notice. But that could have been a different story, but I don't recall.
We're going to get a little bit out of chronological order, but we're going to stay with the little girl for a second because we didn't go into great detail about that on our original podcast. He says when you guys get to Anaconda, don't worry, we're going to come back to your actual entrance in Anaconda. When you guys get to Anaconda, he feels so unbelievably bad about just how messed up war can be. And it's another instance he uses to go on this rant about just how the tough decisions of war and how wars just so messes with you. When he's on Jack Carr's podcast, Jack Carr is sitting there telling him like, "Oh man, like this, you are so brave to be so honest about this and so open, and how war really affected you and the things you had to deal with." And he goes on and on both on podcasts and in this book about how the first thing he did was, or one of the first things he did was go to the medic tent and hold that little girl until she fell asleep all night long.
6 hours or something.
6 hours, yeah. And his arms fell asleep and his legs fell asleep, but he didn't have the the courage to wake this little girl up because he did this. Travis, did that happen?
Not at all. Actually, as soon as we got rolled through the gates of the Firebase Anaconda, it wasn't long after that we heard the inbound Black Hawk, the medevac, to take them. It was maybe an hour, maybe. Kevin, Matt?
I remember the novelty of getting there and unloading stuff and the Black Hawk coming in almost simultaneously. Probably 45, 55 minutes later.
I can't even, again, I have a hard time verbalizing what I'm trying to say. Like, to get into the mindset of someone who will go into such great detail of holding a little girl all night long, only for it never to have happened because the medevac bird came in and grabbed this little girl almost immediately, which goes back to our prior stories. The medevac will if they'll come rolling in for an injured civilian, you better believe they're going to come rolling in for an injured Afghan soldier.
Absolutely.
It's mind-boggling and it's disturbing. It just is. Before we get into you guys rolling into the gates, Matt, do you ever remember seeing dozens upon dozens upon dozens and several occasions of a wrecker coming up and just throwing broken down jingle trucks off the side of the mountain to clear a path?
No. I only remember like one jingle truck. There might have been more, but I only clearly remember one that like rolled off the crappy road that we were on.
Right, and it rolled. You have a picture of that, Travis, don't you?
Several.
And it was like a 5 foot, maybe kind of cliff. So it didn't like roll off the cliff, and a sure sec didn't get thrown off the cliff by a wrecker.
Yeah, more like just kind of
shoulder of the road kind of thing. Yeah, flopped over on the shoulder of the road. So just want to make sure. Again, it's a very small point, but it's a needless point. It's a needless thing to say. And if we'd have gone with Tim's story, again, it makes you guys look very unprepared. He says, Tyler, do you remember the exact number of trucks, or roughly?
Like 80?
That's what he said that made it to Anaconda. 20-something?
Yeah,
I want to say? 30?
He said 30.
He said
it had to have been over 100.
But so he says 30 trucks actually make it. If 30 trucks would have made it to Anaconda, that would have been an epic failure of a mission. Anaconda would not have been able to sustain themselves with 30 trucks. The Czechs wouldn't have been able to get up and running, with only part of those trucks, making it for them. And it would have continued to be a very dangerous, possibly dangerous aerial resupply mission of Blackhawks after Blackhawks after Blackhawks flying in. So the safest thing was that massive. There's an ironic statement. The safest thing was a 200 vehicle convoy up to Anaconda. So, how many vehicles actually made it? Do you remember?
I think we lost in the matrix I looked at. I think we lost 16.
What do you remember losing those trucks to?
The rollovers, like Matt was talking about, we had several that just rolled over. I mean, these roads were horrible, which there's no way you could get a wrecker up there to them to throw them off if you had to. It was just a single lane road the entire way, wasn't it? I mean, Matt, Kevin, it was never any more than a single lane donkey path for the most part.
So when the single road, what do you do with a truck when it breaks down on a single road? Do you just tow it up to a place you can?
The wrecker was towing them for some time.
Right.
Where I don't know what they had. We had a detachment or an attachment from HSC. Mm-hmm. We had a chief warrant officer, a mechanic. Is there, so I think he was bringing parts, and of course, the Afghan truck drivers. Between all of them, my God, they could probably build a truck on the side of the road.
That's true. So, for as much as you can make fun of them for we're talking about and these Afghan trucks aren't going to make it,
right?
But in a weird way, they kind of always do. Like they find a way to jerry rig those things back to. If you give them enough time, they'll get it. Yeah. So you guys do successfully bring, and that's less than around a 10% loss.
Yeah, just under it.
Yeah,
just
which
under
is
10%. Yeah.
Which
I think it was all mechanical or driver error.
Right.
That's what happened.
And it was none of them because, I hate to rehash some things, it wasn't because screwdrivers and radiators. It wasn't because the drivers ran out into the woods because they were scared. It wasn't because they were sabotaging the mission. The trucks just mechanically didn't make it. So you guys get to Anaconda. And this is, when I say a small team would know this story, I feel super confident asking this question just straightforward. You guys would have known if anybody in your element went up into a tower and sniped 20 dudes in 36, 48 hours, just up there as just a wrecking ball. Do you remember hearing reports that, man, your boy that you guys brought with you, Tim Kennedy, he's up there doing the Lord's work?
You know, there was of the fire bases I was on for a couple of deployments. Never at any time or any one was it commonplace for a security element to just randomly start firing from a tower without getting everybody up in arms. And especially as, Tim alluded to, that base had almost been overrun 3 times. So if you have a tower, someone's just cranking off rounds, it's going to get everybody's attention.
Yep.
Now,
I never thought everyone riled up.
Everybody.
Not again.
I mean, if I was just, woke up and going to the latrine or something like that and heard a round or two going off, man, the adrenaline dump would happen immediately.
Right. Because everyone wants to run to a gunfight. It's what you guys train for. Like it's not necessarily a bad thing necessarily. It's like where do I need to be now?
Exactly.
It's on. Let's do this.
Absolutely.
Kevin, do you remember Tim killing 20 people from the tower while you guys were there?
No. I do remember the tower. I remember the camera. I can't remember the acronym
we called it a J-Lens,
now for it.
J-Cam or J-Lens,
but it was called something else at times.
I remember all of what Travis just said. And this would be drawing all the attention of 3 ODAs there. And it would not only be, the novelty, but people would be running to join the fight, whatever it might be.
This would single-handedly make him a legend at the SODIC committee, and this story would be told every class of a Green Beret that went up there and killed 20 guys with a sniper weapon in essentially, one period. It's one of the most outlandish of the outlandish, which is hard to do in this book. It's hard to pick. It's hard to pick.
Mike Goebel would have been he was the kind of guy, if that would have happened, man, he couldn't have stopped talking about it. We would have heard that over and over again.
The other thing, again, I don't think he intentionally does it, but he doesn't know what the consequences of certain statements are, which is this. He said he had to do this, and he had the ability to get all these kills because that ODA didn't have a sniper, and this place desperately needed one. We were lucky enough to do a podcast that we already said ran rampant across the SF community. And guys from that base reached out to us and said, nope, that absolutely never happened. It was our base. We know that. And oh, by the way, we had snipers at that base. So for Tim to say that there were no snipers at that base, and that's why it was such a target-rich environment, is just absolutely a lie.
I talked to the team sergeant. I got in touch with him and I asked him about it. And he was like, first of all, Americans didn't go in those towers. That was the, what do we call them, ASF?
Yeah, Afghan Security Force,
yeah,
I think so.
Afghan Security. He said they were too dangerous to be up in. So he goes, but while he was telling me, he's like, man, if that would have happened, I would have known about it immediately. Somebody engaging, from those towers.
Not to make light of it, because it sounds like I'm going to, but I'm not. This is a serious comment. The guy says that he has a Valor Award for every deployment he was ever on.
Oh.
And if you think for a second he goes up and single-handedly takes out 9 guys in a mud hut with grenades and then leaves them to rest. If he goes up into a tower and kills, snipes 20 guys, like these are valorous actions. You would have the Valor Awards that you claim you have, but you don't have any Valor Awards. And I'm not knocking him for not having Valor Awards. That's not what it's about. Right. It's about saying that you have them. It's about saying that you have so many of them that you got one every deployment and that you don't. That is stolen valor. That is textbook stolen valor. Especially, and that's every one of these instances we're actually talking about is stolen valor, and probably would have gotten you a valor medal if any of these things were true. But it just didn't happen. We'll keep pushing. Right now, and if you guys didn't see it, you didn't see it. You know, I only want the truth. But he says he has to get rid of his uniforms and essentially burn them because they're just covered and drenched in blood and guts, you know, from the convoy and from the legless soldier. That he's like, that uniform's garbage. Do you guys on the way up here to Anaconda ever remember seeing that and just, you know, you were in the truck with him, you know, Matt, did you ever look at him and be like, my God, what happened to you, Tim? You're covered in blood and guts.
Yeah, no, he definitely didn't look like he walked out of a horror movie.
and you were there, like you would know, you were in the truck with him. You know, at some point, you guys are getting together to, you know, during this trek up. This is another thing that absolutely surprised me. I think I was talking to you after the podcast. How long did it take for you guys to make it to Anaconda? This one blew my mind. Or if you remember the whole duration of the mission.
Yeah, so once I looked on the vignette, it was 18 days total.
18 days. And this isn't a hit on the book, 'cause there's plenty of other things to hit on. It sounded like it was a couple days up, a couple days, you know, on Anaconda, and a couple days back. He never says the total amount of time. So that's just, you know, an opinion based, just, you know, by reading it. But when you find an 18-day mission, this actually reminded me, that kind of drives home the point. For 18 days, you would have seen Tim over and over and over again. Like you would have got together, you know, during security halts. You would have got together during briefings. You would have got together during cross-loading of rolled over vehicles. You'd have seen them time and time and time again, you know, during clearing buildings. You would have seen them so many times drenched in blood, right, and in his kit. Yeah. And you can change the uniform all you want, but you still got the same kit. That body armor stays with you the whole time. So you would have seen that. Like that's something pretty unique that happens and I believe would have stuck out in your minds. But no one has a different story than he was. You know, he's probably pretty dusty, but blood and gore is probably not a good description.
The picture. That's right.
Yeah,
of him.
I know.
Well, we haven't gotten to that village yet, right?
But we do have pictures, you know, of him, you know, during this convoy. So you guys, what you got, Kevin?
I was going to say, Travis may have shared it. Maybe it's the picture Tyler was just talking about, but there's a picture of him in his DCUs from the same day we were at the compound and got back to Anaconda.
Yeah, it's and we know he can't say, well, that was the ones I changed it into, because which ones did he change into? Do you remember? Because we talked about it.
Yeah, he changed into ACUs.
He changed into ACUs. And what he talked about ACUs?
Complimented them.
He said ACUs.
That was probably the biggest lie in the book.
Yeah, he said ACUs were the best uniforms the Army ever did.
Nobody in the Army ever said that.
I was like, what? No one ever liked the ACUs from the get go. They were the worst uniform. Like, you know, the DCUs was the uniform for Afghanistan. The multicams were good. They were. But man, the ACUs were an atrocious uniform to go in any environment. Is there anything you guys want to, before we move, give you guys a chance, is there anything that I didn't cover, you know, so far that you wanted to cover, or anything particular in Anaconda?
I can't think of anything. Looks like we hit the highlights for sure.
Or, you know, the back half of this is, you know, goes a lot quicker than the front half, but there's still a couple things to be said. I'll go back just to mention it. You know, when you guys, I'll go out of order, but I just remembered this one. When you guys left that village where you hurt the family.
Okay.
You know, that's the part in the book where Tim's like, hey, it's go time. Like, we're killing everyone. If you're if if you look at us the wrong way, you're getting it. If you're a fighting age male, you're getting it. He just, goes on and on about, you guys basically are tired of playing defense, and you're going to go into offense and just give it to them, which goes back to, well, that's a war crime. And that's not what SF does. And that's really, and you've mentioned this before in the podcast. We mentioned it in our podcast too, because, that's not something you do in someone else's backyard as well, because they're the ones that are going to have to deal with the fallout of you shooting a bunch of unarmed men.
Yeah, and there's a collateral effect to this too. And when SF is operating on battlefields, we're always in someone else's battle space, the big army. And when they paint these pictures of us, these just tyrants running around just slaying people, covered in blood and guts. Oh man, that presents such a huge complication for the command when you've got to work with these adjacent units to your left and your right in their battle space, just trying to operate within it.
And this goes back to a bigger question because we're talking about it right now, so I'll bring it up. That's another, and that's a blatant war crime. That's a blatant one. And who approved this book? Like, I still haven't got to answer that. Well,
Tim ended up going to prison for something he didn't even do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you'll go to prison for something you didn't even do. You shouldn't have lied about that. The DOD didn't approve this book. How do you write a book? He's still a Green Beret.
Well, I wanted to ask you: is there any updates on the Army taking action on this?
I do know for a fact it's gone up to a USASOC level, and there are a lot of Green Berets that are still current, active duty, and now these guys are battalion command sergeant majors. They're high-ranking people, and they're very upset about this. They want to pull his tab, again, that's not me being vindictive about it. If you're going to write this type of book with these amount of lies, and you're going to have stolen valor, you're going to say you got injured when you didn't, and you say you should have Purple Hearts when you don't, valor medals when you don't, admitting to war crimes that you didn't even do. It's not just the book. You also did this on podcasts, the largest podcast in America. You did this on the Joe Rogan Experience. You did this on Jocko's. You did this on Sean Ryan. You did this. So it's amazing to me, honestly, that he still has his tab. Travis, you got
to almost wonder.
When you were still in, had you written this book and went on podcast, you think you'd still have your Green Beret?
No, I would have probably been in jail.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would have been in jail, sure.
Kevin, what's like on that particular subject? Like, what's your take on that?
Oh yeah, I agree. And in preparation for this podcast, I told my wife about this convoy, and she had no idea what I was talking about. SF is full of quiet professionals, so writing a book never crossed my mind.
Right. Yeah, and I not to get off topic of the storyline, but it just fits during this narrative. I'm completely taken back to some degree. Two things. One, as we said it time and time again, the amount of people who didn't read this book, like the only people who could have truly combated this book, never read the book. So they wouldn't even know how upset to be about this book. But when we did the podcast, and we were the first ones to do a full, true deep dive, kind of, expose podcast on this, you never know if anyone's going to come in your corner or not. And the amount of other social media, Green Beret platforms, and podcasters really, really rallied behind this, and we're like, you know what? What the anti-hero just did was crazy, and we have to talk about it. And the community, it caught like wildfire.
Except for that old man, I think he's a Marine, who breaks down videos, and he goes, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? Now, Travis said this.
I can't think his name.
He got our names wrong. Power move, by the way.
Yeah.
He brought your name wrong, and he didn't even know my name.
I know. I can't think of his name. I know exactly what you're talking about.
And then he went on.
It's embarrassing. He has 1 million followers.
He went
YouTube.
on JT's podcast this time for Pi. I haven't watched that full one yet, but that was pretty recent. But
yeah, well, and the thing is, and this is where it gets back, and this is so important. I can't thank you guys enough. Is that he broke down our original podcast. Was like, this is pretty damning. And then, he broke down your interview with him, and he was like, well, he's kind of bringing receipts. But it goes back to the only receipts he brought was him circling the wagon and rehashing things that did happen. He never addressed anything that didn't happen. That's not bringing receipts. Like, he didn't address anything that we brought up, and so this is bringing receipts. 3 guys that were there that are fed up enough about it to say, hey, like, we will correct the record, and this is bringing receipts. And I truly cannot thank you guys enough for doing this. It
needed to be done. It really
needed
did.
to be. It's long overdue, honestly. Yeah, to a point. The thing that we were the first, we're not the first podcast to question Tim by any means, but we were the first ones to really do what we did. And I can't believe it lasted that long, to be honest with you.
The only naysayers, the only people that didn't agree are the ones that said, even if he's lying, I still support him. Yeah. There's people that say, I don't care if he's lying. And you're not going to change those minds.
Well, having people that were there, will definitely help. And there's still a lot of people on the fence that were like, well, it's kind of a he said, she said thing. Like, they said they talked to the teammates, but, how do we know that? And I hate to say that. It's a valid question. I'm not even necessarily mad at that question. As we come back and into the convoy getting home, there's only a few major things but they're
Brent,
very
if you don't
important.
mind, let me just make one comment.
Yeah.
I've tracked down every team member on 7131 except for 2 guys. That's Irish Mike and Boris, the other 18 Echo. Haven't been able to track them down. Everybody is so frustrated at this account of the convoy. Not that anybody was looking for credit, but it was just like, it was almost sitting in its perfect form where no one saw it, no one knew about it.
Yeah.
At least with the team, it was amazing what we pulled off, truly the impossible.
Yeah.
It was the most it was the most ridiculous mission you could ever imagine.
Yeah. I'd be hard pressed. I'm interested now. Like, I want USASOC to look into this. Name me a bigger convoy that ODAs were asked to deliver. And I don't know if you could find one.
There is, if you don't mind me just giving some prompts to, there's a couple, Jamie and Scott Headley, that work for the Arm Lifestyle magazine, and they reached out to all of us, and they're writing the true account of what happened.
Oh. So they found you?
Yeah.
It seems like everybody can find you guys except Tim Kennedy.
Well, they said they did.
Yeah.
To be fair, they said they talked to their team.
And he even said, on his rebuttal that were lies. It's like, I reached out to they didn't talk to any of my teammates or any of my friends. Like, that's it's complete fabrication when it's just not true. Again, all you guys have already said. There are people on this podcast that couldn't make it. But you have talked to all those guys as your teammates, and there's not a single person going, no, they're just haters. That's the Tim's book is correct. They're just being haters and trying to tear down a fellow veteran. So if someone's looking for receipts, I don't know how to get more than that.
The tear down thing is something that people say when they're financially tied into Tim Kennedy and they have to say something. They say, we don't tear down people we have to build things. So the tear down thing is essentially a go-to.
After you had the first podcast, I was talking with Tim, obviously came out to the range. I was begging him to come on here. I was like, Tim, you're going to be the first person that they targeted for the most part for justifiable reasons, but just to, man up and come on here and just explain it.
What'd he say?
Face the music. No, he wouldn't do it. He said, if I come on there, it's going to bring them more of an audience if I come on there. That's all this is about. And I was like, Tim, it's not, man. I'll be honest with you. When I was first talking with Tim after you spoke with me, and we went through a lot of this stuff chronologically to build up to the 101.
Yeah.
I was in such a selfish mindset because I was just concerned about recovering this whole state that he called me a pussy in the book, that I was letting everything else off to the peripheral, right? But So
it's
Tim
personal.
came
I mean,
out.
it's a pretty personal attack. I mean, I understand why you focus in on that. It's no one else. To be fair, no one else got attacked like that as personally as you did. Kevin Keys, not even close to it.
Right.
But Kevin, he talked about Kevin like he was a junior, officer that didn't have very much combat experience, and that couldn't be any further from the truth either.
And
but at least
in some way, I understand it. Writing a fiction book is sanctimonious, right? It's what it is. And having been an NCO, I got it. There's always going to be that healthy debate between NCO and officers, and that's what I saw it as. But I'm like, dude, man, you just can't go out there and say something like that. I understand the rubbing up against each other, and keeping just a healthy rapport going, right? But
the problem is there's plenty.
God, man.
And there are plenty of real instances you could have found or used.
Sure.
And officers are just like enlisted. They're people, and you're going to have good ones and you're going to have bad ones. The unfortunate thing about officers when you have bad ones is they're in charge. So it's a lot easier to be really mad at them because you have to do what they at the end of the day what they say.
True.
You can get mad at your senior bravo all day, but at the end of the day, he doesn't really run the ODA. So, so the truth is that stuff does happen. Unfortunately, there are politically driven officers out there. There are. He just picked the wrong one to try to make an example of, because all the teammates, not to sit here and blow smoke up you, but no, that's not true. I don't even know if I had to ask. Every single one of them had nothing but good things to say about you.
It was, being an officer in Special Forces is truly the easiest position for any officer because you have the most competent NCOs. It is just unbelievable. The selection process, the training, it procures the most amazing soldier on the battlefield. Right. It is the easiest job in the world to be an 18 Alpha.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we'll finish this thing up by on its way back. This is just a unique, again, just needless lie. It goes back again to etiquette in someone else's space. He talks about like as soon as you guys leave the gate that he knows troubles are brewing because he sees this fighting age male, a little bit older but military age male guy, mean mugging, has a radio within arm's distance, calls it out, and takes a warning shot right above the guy's head. And the guy doesn't even flinch, just stares back at him. He's like, "Oh, like we're still in it." But that is not something you would do in someone else's battle space. And I can't remember which teammate I talked to. One of the teammates was like, "Yes, I remember that happening. Mike Goebel made a call about that, but I don't remember anyone shooting over it." And I don't know if you guys remember, even remember that call coming on the radio, or someone taking warning shots at people as soon as you left the wire.
I remember the call, but I don't remember the shot.
Yeah.
But as some other teammates said that a shot was.
No one remembers the shot. They remember the call, and they thought Mike Goebel.
Maybe that's what I was confused on then.
They thought Mike Goebel made that call. And it's just interesting that whenever something unique happens, usually Mike Goebel's involved.
Oh yeah, I get you. Yeah.
And that's what really got me fired up. Like when you're all alone against a compound wall, it's Mike Goebel that happens to be there. When you're sniping 20 guys in a short amount of time, Mike Goebel is the one who's there. And of course, Travis let him know what's unique about that and why that fires me up.
Yeah, that fired up everybody in the team too. I mean, there's a few guys, if you would have had on this podcast, who couldn't come because they're still active duty, they would have probably been flipping this table over right now.
Because Mike Goebel's not with us anymore.
Yeah, it is. It appears it really appears that that's what he was doing, was just being advantageous of a
fallen comrade.
Sure enough, to expand a story, which, there was no checks and balances.
And he's done it, and I'll say it, I think maybe for the first time about Sodic. And what really fires me up about it is he's done this 3 times now. He did it with Mike Goebel. He did it with Sergeant Major Fernandez from the SIF in his rebuttal video, saying he told me that I could fail Sodic.
That's right, yeah.
Well, Sergeant Major Fernandez is no longer with us. So it's really convenient, again, that you picked a dead guy to be your sole witness, which is also crazy because we know you didn't intentionally fail the shoot-in for Sodic because you have teammates that went on that video and on the comments, and I say teammates, like Sodic teammates,
right,
and said, Tim, I was at Sodic with you when you failed. You failed the very first unknown shoot that was like 2 to 3 weeks inside the course. Don't use, a dead sergeant major to be your sole witness because we were there. We were there with you. We know you did it. And the third time he did it was in his book when he says a guy quit Sodic, his teammate, his partner, his sniper partner in the schoolhouse, quits in the middle of a stalking lane, gets up, and the instructor's like, well, I guess you failed Sodic, because he's like, I didn't quit, my teammate quit. And before his teammate quits in his book, he's like, the reason why this guy quit is because he wasn't like me. He didn't have the drive. He didn't have the ambition. He didn't have the focus. He didn't have what it takes to be a sniper. And as a Sodic graduate, Sodic isn't that hard of a school. It's kind of a gentleman's school. Like, it's not a hard school. The standards can be hard, but no one quits over stress. And so, of course, I wanted to look that guy up and talk to him. Why do you think I couldn't talk to him, Travis?
He was dead. He's
also dead. This is the third time that he's done this. And if that doesn't drive Green Berets crazy, and if that doesn't get your tab pulled as if Stolen Valor wasn't enough, that one really, really gets me. So we're going down the convoy. At some point, really the next big thing in the book is the tick you guys get into, and some A-10s come in and save your ass on some danger close air support. Well,
absolutely.
I'll have you walk us through that. What happened?
Yeah, so we're leaving the fire base. The day or two before, we tried to provide or pull off a feint where we had everybody kind of saddle up, and we took all the ODAs out, and we just kind of moved to contact.
Okay.
Back down the route we came. That's the way the battalion initially wanted us to go, but I think everybody was pretty clear, come hell or high water, we're not going back through Chakazoy Pass. And
fool me once.
Right, so we had some local intel that there was this pathway, come out of Anaconda and take a left instead of going back, that we think the trucks could make it, but we're not sure.
Okay. But you had to try.
Had to try.
Yeah.
And so we hook left coming out the day or two before we went out, moved to contact.
Because you're not hiding this. It's on the way up, it's a 200 vehicle convoy. God,
Right.
there's just no hiding it,
No way. Right.
What do you guys on the way back? Do you remember take a
little
rough
bit
step
less. The cargo trucks were with us. We dropped off checks off Afghan National Army.
Right, they're just unloaded now,
Yeah,
but
they're just
it's
unloaded.
still a massive convoy.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. All the trucks are coming back.
Yeah, and we're talking probably miles long. Like how long does this convoy stretch for?
Well, every now and then, Kevin, remind me, we would look at the Blue Force tracker and see the rear ODA, and just with the accordion effect of going up and down the hills or something breaking down, we probably stretched it out a couple of miles sometimes. I'm just a shot in the dark. What would you think, Kevin?
Oh yeah, I remember when we left Anaconda, and the start of the trip, we would say we were leaving, and the last truck would let us know when they were moving. Maybe 45 minutes later. So there's
there's no hiding it. There's nothing you can do.
So that was probably one of the most amazing close air support encounters we had in that mission. For one, I've never had anything like it happen to me before. It's like I was telling you before on the phone, there's 3 types of CAS, right?
That's right.
There's pre-planned, there's on call, and there is divine intervention. And to understand how those A-10s came over to us, it was just, as I was talking to Matt, the JTAC, he told me that they were up in the air, and I think battalion had stopped all operations, just so in case they were expecting the worst,
just so they could push assets to you.
They could push assets to us.
Yep.
A couple A-10s were in the area, and I guess they heard the only thing making any noise on the SATCOM was us.
Okay.
Getting ready to leave out, so my understanding is the lead pilot said, hey, let's just go see what's going on. Nothing else is happening. They come into the airspace, and he checks in with Matt, the JTAC, and they just kind of do a handshake. Hey, you, this is me. And as he's coming around, he looks down and sees there's just rows of fighters on each side of us.
Okay.
And he's from my understanding, he's just screaming for the JTAC, saying, give me the commander's initials. They are right on top of you. And I had talked to the JTAC previously. I'm like, look, man, if we get into it, for the love of God, do not try to call me on the radio and ask for my damn initials. They are TSW. Right? If it looks that bad, immediately just send that to the pilot. We'll deal with the aftermath later. And that's what he did. I mean, he made the call. He made a good call. And, he gave him my initials. And, I mean, all of a sudden it was just – we came out. I remember, Kevin, remember that little smoke trail went across the hood of an RPG? It blew up on the wall next to us. The Afghans in front of us are bailing out of their Hiluxes, so we know we're in it.
Right.
And almost immediately, it was like, one thing I could imagine is like a cheap mattress in a hotel room you put quarters in to have it vibrate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That 40,000-pound vehicle just, and I'm like, what the hell is this?
Like an earthquake.
Yeah. And on the left side of us, above this high mud wall, is a spew of sand.
Yeah.
You can almost imagine seeing stuff, videos from the Navy, shooting 50 cals in the water. It shows the spray.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I have, just this massive dust tail comes up, and I'm looking over the hood of the vehicle, and here comes a A-10 and goes up, and he kind of stalls, rolls back, and comes down the other side of the convoy.
So badass.
And I mean, it was... It happened so fast. When I said divine intervention, there's nothing else you could account it for.
Yeah.
Nothing. It's unreal.
Those guys up there just killing massive amounts of enemy and never missing a meal or a workout. No, I'm not jealous. I'm not jealous at all.
But this is a point where Tim said he was jumping out and running up through some windows, tossing grenades, but we were so buttoned up. I mean, had you run out of any vehicle left or right, I mean, how far was that cast coming in? It was 20 feet from us?
Oh, yeah. And as you said, the walls were shoulder height, so not anywhere to go from there.
Nothing, nowhere to go and nothing to do.
Right.
Right. And the vehicles were in the perfect position. They were at the right height, had a good line of fire. So why would you get out of the vehicle?
Right. That's actually a really good point. What you needed the height of the vehicle to even see anything over the wall. Why would you come down to ground level and not be able to see anything over that wall? And it goes back to kind of what you said. Now, some of the Afghans dismounted, but that's what an untrained force does. They get out with no plan and expose themselves. That's not what a special forces soldier does.
Had Tim run off left or right of that convoy, he would have been mowed down.
Yeah.
By that A-10 fire. And that's where Dano, we think, pretty sure just got the only person injured. Got a little flak through his hand.
Well, he wasn't the only person injured, according to Tim Kennedy's book. I don't know if you guys knew this, but at this point, Tim's on his deathbed. He takes shrapnel to his neck, his shoulders, his back, his arms. One was, what do you say, centimeters away from his carotid artery. Yeah, from his carotid artery. And again, Mike Goebel is begging him to get on the bird with Dan, or one, to see the medic, and to get on the bird with Dan. And Tim says, basically, in his book says, hey, dude, I'm the baddest dude here, and there's not a single person that can force me on that bird. I came in with you guys, and I'm leaving with you guys. And Mike says he's so concerned about his injuries that he goes up to the medic and says, hey, man, you need to look at Tim. He's hurt pretty bad, and he's not getting on the bird. You guys remember? I'm sure you remember seeing all that.
I have no recollection of this. I remember seeing him at times throughout the rest of the mission. I don't recall any injury to his neck. And the medic in our vehicle never mentioned him.
The medic that he talks about in the book,
right,
called him yesterday.
Yeah.
and said, "Hey, man, I'm coming on the show now." He wants nothing to do with this whatsoever.
Right.
He's
Right.
still active duty.
He's still active duty, right? Yeah.
So we had 2 medics. I'm just going to say it was one of the 2 of them
Yep.
for his anonymity. So he said there was absolutely has no recollection of that whatsoever, none. And Tim also said there was body bags being put in the Black Hawk. Dano, who was hurt, I was right there at the Black Hawk when we were putting him on there. And now it's kind of like Tim took Dano's story, because Dano was telling me, he was actually asking me, he's like, "Hey, sir, can I stay? Can I stay?" And I'm like, I just saw his hand bandaged up.
Right.
I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I don't care." And I turned to the medic and I'm like, "What do you think?"
Right.
He's like, "He's got to get on there." I'm like, "Sorry, dude, you got to go. This is the medical professional right here."
Yeah, and I hate to say it, what seems like an insignificant injury, if it's deep enough, which it was.
That blew a knuckle out.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's not that he needs to get on the bird right now, like for life-saving purposes now.
Right.
But you continue on for days in a dirty environment and let that thing get infected and then go septic, you will be fighting for your life.
Sure will.
So it was absolutely the right call. And it's one of those things as you get older, like you look at those things and you're like, that's right. That's why you make those calls. Well, that one. Tyler made a really good post about that, because in his rebuttal he was like, "Well, if you look at my videos of me fighting and and me throughout kind of history, if you look at all these brown spots on my neck and my shoulder and my back, like that's what that's from is my injuries, and that's why I kind of joked about the Purple Hearts in the mail." And Tyler, you found was it a commercial he did
Commercial
for
a Whoopee company,
for a
Whoopee
Whoopee
jacket.
yes.
And he takes it off to get in an ice bath, and it's his back, and then he turns and it's his right side.
Yeah.
And obviously there's nothing there.
It's as clean as can be. And I did go back, even though I knew the story, I still went back and looked at some old fights and to see if there's anything like that maybe happened that he can try to say that was it. It's you were on TV with your shirt off
On pay-per-view.
1,000 times after that, and that's a story you want to go with and don't think we can go, check your story. It's insanity. On top of, he probably didn't think that his teammates he's betting that his teammates aren't going to go on, and he lost that bet. And that's another one that really gets me kind of going, because everyone who really laid it out there and ended up unfortunately getting hurt by the enemy and really earning that Purple Heart, to lie about that is a slap in the face of guys who were injured in combat. To pretend like you were when you weren't, that's another massive stolen valor. And one of the things he said was, "Well, I was an attachment to you guys, and basically, like, you guys didn't put him in for it, or didn't take care of him because he was just an attachment because it was you guys." Matt, I want to talk to you for a second. As a canine handler, you were attached to the team as well, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is correct.
How do they take care of you?
This team was so well oiled, worked together. I mean, they were professionals. They took care of me. I had a silly little pay issue. After they made fun of me about it, they took care of it.
On brand, yeah.
They put me in for a cab, and an award. Even the team sergeant, when you guys were getting ready to leave, and I was going on my little 2-week vacation, mid-tour leave, he even took the time to help me and teach me a little bit on how to write an NCOER.
Wow.
So they took care of me, not just financially, awards, but the team started trying to develop me as a leader too, and give me some education.
So they were capable of putting you in forward as an attachment, but apparently they were incapable of putting in a fellow Green Beret in forward or taking care of him.
You should have been a prosecutor, brother.
I wish I was that smart, but this is child's play. This isn't even hard to uncover. It's that bad. I guess the last one I really want to cover, and again, this one is you probably should end on the Purple Heart one because that should piss off everybody. If you're not mad by now, you should be mad at this one. And it's the final village, and it's just a weird story. And at basically the final village you guys go to, and everyone's friendly, and there is a dead guy hanging from the tree, and it sounds like a scene out of 300 where this rotting corpse is there, and he goes up to the village elder and he's like, "Are there any Taliban here?" And he's like, "Nope." And he's like, "There's no Taliban here at all?" He's like, "Well, there's one, and he's hanging from that tree." And then he talks about how he's so overwhelmed with all this emotion from all the murder and chaos, and almost losing his life from the close air support is finally like all off his shoulders, and he starts weeping uncontrollably. And this is where he has this human moment that he goes almost anytime he goes into great detail, he's lying, which is very unusual because usually when anyone goes into great detail, you're like, oh, well, that must have really happened.
I looked into that, and that's actually what narcissists and liars do is they create all these details where you're like, well, they wouldn't make up all those details.
Right.
And that's just their way to get, a lie through.
And that's where the girls come up and wash all the body parts that are on him.
This is where the picture was taken.
And
if
this
I'm
is
not
where
mistaken.
the picture, yeah, it
was.
The very end of the whole thing, he's in not ripped up from, gunfire or anything like that, shrapnel, no blood.
Yeah, but in the book, like little girls come up to him and wipe off all the blood and guts and body parts that are hanging off of his kit from the close air support. It seems silly, but I got to ask it because you guys were there. Do you remember seeing, Kevin, do you remember seeing a dead guy hanging from a noose? And do you remember this village that he's talking about?
So I will say I do remember a village that was just beautiful, super peaceful area, little kids coming out.
Yeah.
And he was correct in saying that this experience was overwhelming. I remember feeling that maybe this is what it is all for. The rest of Afghanistan could be
this
like
is why
this.
we're here.
I do not remember gallows. I do not remember kids coming out to wash the blood of our enemies off of us. I don't remember any of that. But I do remember this being, a real moment. A real moment.
It made Tim cry.
Yeah. And this is a personal question. Did you break down uncontrollably and cry though?
No, but I do remember having this feeling. Hey, maybe this is it, making it all worth it.
Are you dead inside?
No, I didn't.
Maybe
break down and cry. Maybe just a little bit. It was an experience of we've been fighting for the last couple of weeks.
Just nice,
and crossing this valley, and it was an opportunity to exhale. I think maybe we're going to be all right.
But like I said, and I've said this at times too. Like this is a couple mile convoy, so unlike what Tim said, he's like, there will be drastic stories, and when you ask 3 guys, you get 4 different versions. I have never gotten a different version from any one of you or anyone else that I've talked to that didn't come on this podcast. I may have got a different perspective for someone that was at a different part of the convoy, but never, when 2 people remembered the same incident, never got a different story. And so, which is why, I got to ask you, Matt, because maybe you were somewhere else in the village. Do you remember seeing a rotting dead corpse with the skin falling off of it, hanging from a tree in that village, and then Tim getting washed clean from little Afghan girls, all the body parts that were still on him?
No, I don't remember. Guys swinging from a tree, or the local villagers giving us baths. So no.
Did I know it's going to sound bad, but it does make me laugh a little bit. Did you cry? A little bit?
I think Kevin said it best.
Yeah, I mean, I get that feeling of this is what we're here for. We do feel like we've been putting our lives on the line this whole time, and for once in 3 weeks, I don't think I'm going to die here, and that's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah.
He was talking to the village elder at this time. Something tells me you, as a ground force commander, and the team sergeant would have also been there, because usually the KLE is just that, key leader engagement. And
He said he was talking to the village elder there?
Yes, and you were a key leader and should have been there. Do you remember any of this?
No, that was, I think we ran, that village was in the Ghazni district.
Okay.
And it was a Hazara village. And it was, just like Kevin was saying, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
We couldn't believe we were in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. Certainly there was no talent. There's no one hanging from a tree. That would have been just so out of place for this.
Yeah.
I mean, the children running around were just, everything was so clean. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It seemed like every dwelling had a huge satellite dish on top of it. It was modernized desert dwelling.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was a lot of green zone in there. They were moving water around. It was just beautiful. So no, there was none of that.
Well, after that, the final nail in the coffin to me, the Purple Heart, is he finishes up in the book and says that he has to go look and get, was told he has to go look at the medic down in almost said Bagram, in Kandahar, where he was really based out of, because he was a soft LNO.
Right.
And I'm certain his job was to stand up and give the last 24, next 24 on the jock floor for the checks. And outside this random, this is probably, I was so excited to get, because this is one of the few times he probably ever left the wire, was to get out and do this with you guys.
Might have been, yeah.
Yeah. And so he said he had to go, they told him he had to go look at the medic and to go to the med shed in Kandahar. The med shed in Kandahar, absolutely. If you guys didn't take care of them, the med shed in Kandahar would have taken care of them.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Green Berets don't take that any amount of shrapnel without giving Purple Hearts. We're not.
Right.
And I do know there's sob stories of the infantry, and there's our sob stories in the military. They're far and few between.
Yeah, I've never heard of them.
But yeah, I tell you, it's not the Green Berets. The Green Berets will give you a Purple Heart if you get injured 10 times out of 10 times. They take care of their
Absolutely.
own. Well, guys, that's what we wanted to rehash it with you guys on the ground. But I do have one last question that I'll ask you first, Matt. Then I'll ask you, Kevin, and Travis. You can take the final answer on this. But if you had something that you wanted to tell the American people about this book, and the portrayal in this book, or the embellishments of this book, and tell the American people something that's like, hey, take it from me, some guys on the ground, this is something you should know. What would you tell them?
Yeah, I thought about this quite a bit, and kind of short and sweet. This was an extraordinary mission on its own merits by itself, and not everything needs to be made into a TV or movie.
Yeah. That's a common theme for sure. There was enough valor. There was enough good things happening. There was enough danger. They didn't have to make up more of it.
Plenty of it.
The true story was a good story, and I'm glad you guys are getting a chance, and someone else is reaching out to you to tell it without having to interject all the Tim Kennedy embellishments to explain away. You can actually just tell the story right and how it goes. Kevin, what do you think about that question?
Yeah, very similar to what Matt said. It was an amazing experience on its own. And one of the things that I really want to kind of rehash, some of the things we talked about here, some of the elements that were added by the embellishment made the teams seem far more inept or unprepared than they really were. A lot of the mission went as well and was a success because of the successful preparatory job that I got to participate in. Great people on the team. Our Bravos ensured we were prepared with ammo. Travis made sure we were headed in the right direction, had air cover, everything was set up for success. And it really wasn't a situation for a lot of those embellishments to ever happen, is we had a lot of the preparation in place.
You know, I had a teammate at the unit that summed it up for me, and I just thought it was really true. He's like, Brent, you know, I don't have a Valor Award, and I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. Like, he was in Ranger Bat for years, and he was at the end of the surge with the unit, and a career in the GWAT, and he goes, and you know what? We've always, every team I've been a part of has been really good at planning and executing that plan or adjusting when that plan needed adjusting. And no one ever had to do anything valorous because we were prepared and we did it. Most time that Valor Awards are giving out is because someone screwed up and someone had to do something amazing to undo that. And you know what? He couldn't have been any more right. Like, it's not 100%, but man, let me tell you, I don't know, 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, that's absolutely true.
Sometimes boring means everyone did their job.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis, what do you got? We'll end on you, man.
For the American public, this is not how a Green Beret team operates. Even though we were in kind of sort of conventional infantry mounted mode doing that, the mindset in these special forces teams, the maturity level, we just don't go around throwing grenades in windows. We just, the embellishments are, I mean, that's a kind word for a lie, but it denigrates the sacrifice of everyone in those units that are kind of the quiet professionals. They're not looking for the limelight. And like you said, it's tough to come on here sometimes. It goes against everything.
Right.
It's always stay away from the media. You know, you're the quiet professional now, but this just had to happen. I would be remiss if the American public were to think that this is how United States Army Green Beret operate in any capacity. No. It's an absolutely horrible narrative, and it did not happen. Did not happen.
I actually got one more. I did, because it was my wheelhouse. I got to do a lot of this research and a lot of these calls. But you've got to be on all these podcasts, and you've got to hear all the updates and sit on it, and sit on the teammates doing it. But you're a combat veteran as well. What's I know we get a mic, to say this most of the time. Usually you're just interjecting and talking about specific things. But I don't know if you've ever had a chance to weigh in on this holistically. And for you, it's not just to the American people. Just what are your thoughts on this book and the stories and how this is unfolded? Just holistically, what are your thoughts?
I thought it was a great book, and I said it before. It's a great book if it was fiction. It reads like a Tom Clancy novel, and my biggest gripe is with all the people that have financial ties in with Tim Kennedy. And they are betting down in this, and I don't know what's going to happen because they seem to think it's going to wash over, and more people are, they're like, oh, everything's going to be the same for Tim Kennedy after this, and I don't think it is, and I really wish people would just go, hey, I was fooled. I had no idea. There's no shame in that. Right. You should have looked into it a little bit more, and it seems a little crazy, but if Sean Ryan said, hey, I didn't do my research, my bad. Right? That's all you have to say. I'm financially invested in Tim Kennedy. I co-wrote his book. This is what he told me.
Right.
Those types of people I wish would step up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I keep saying last question, but we really end this show one way and one way only. One way and one way only.
I told the Super Chats 20 minutes ago we'd be there in 10 minutes.
I know. That's fine. This is important enough. Travis, you got a funny story for us?
You may have to cut this.
I
already like it.
I already want to keep it.
So, flying down here was the worst experience of my life.
Well, whose idea was it to book a 4 p.m. flight in?
I did.
You did?
I just got a lot of stuff happening back home.
Okay.
Had to come in and shoot in.
I will take it.
So thank you all for affording me this opportunity to correct the record.
Thanks
so
for
I'm
coming.
flying down here, and I'm in the window seat, and you might have to cut this.
Okay.
I'm sitting next to a transsexual.
That's not getting cut.
No.
Okay. Yet.
What'd you do, Travis?
Jeez, man, I have never in my life felt so uncomfortable for an hour.
Oh yeah, you're like touching. You're trying not to touch.
Oh gosh, it's unbelievable, man. The nails were just
The nails, the Adam's apple, the beard.
Oh, it was the most.
Oh,
unbelievable-
stop it.
How are we doing that?
The size 12 feet and size 6 sandals.
Her little princess sandals, big man feet in them.
Gosh, man, I have never in my life. And I go to the stewardess and I'm like, is there any seat out here available? I will pay right now. To
Right.
And there wasn't.
You know what's funny is we actually planned that.
Next time we ask you to come on the podcast, do it the first time.